Yang Kai's expression eased significantly after hearing this. Xiao Yuyang added with a serious expression, "Just so you know, this king did not wait here just to try to steal your spirit pills. It's just, an ordinary man is innocent, but treasures make one guilty. You should understand my meaning. With your cultivation level, if you secretly retained any extraordinary treasure pills, you'd only be attracting endless trouble to yourself." Yang Kai nodded and answered, "Junior understands. Many thanks for considering my situation, Senior Xiao." He knew that even though Xiao Yuyang was offering up a pleasant-sounding excuse, his true objective was still to steal his extraordinary treasure pills. Well, perhaps steal wasn't the best word to use, as Xiao Yuyang would definitely compensate him. But even so, Xiao Yuyang was correct. Since if Yang Kai really did have extra extraordinary treasure pills in his possession, his future days would be extremely dark and dangerous. He didn't need to fear Dao Source Realm cultivators, but what about emperors? Although it was true that Emperor Realm Masters couldn't use these extraordinary treasure pills personally, which emperor didn't have disciples or relatives, an extraordinary treasure pill would still be extremely attractive to them. At that time, countless Emperor Realm Masters would definitely hear the news and swarm him to try to rob him. But now it was proven that all of Yang Kai's extraordinary treasure pills had been used up, and Xiao Yuyang and 5 other Emperor Realm Masters were present to serve as witnesses to this. It was likely that nobody would try to make trouble for Yang Kai in order to rob extraordinary treasure pills from him in the future. In a sense, Yang Kai should actually be thanking Xiao Yuyang for this. At this moment, Yang Kai's space ring had reached Gao Shueting's hands while the other 5 had finished their own inspection, not finding much of use. As such, Gao Shueting didn't even bother searching his space ring and simply tossed it back to Yang Kai. Yang Kai put on his ring again before looking at Xiao Yuyang and saying, "If Senior Xiao has nothing else to say, then this junior will take his leave first." "Good." Xiao Yuyang gently nodded, but in the next moment his expression changed as he commented, "This king has some advice for you, if you're willing to hear it. It would be Junior's honor to receive advice from Senior Xiao." Yang Kai hurriedly adopted a serious expression. Xiao Yuyang's expression became much warmer when he saw how accepting Yang Kai was as he quickly said, "You won't be able to swallow everything if you try to eat too much." Yang Kai arched his brow as a contemplative expression appeared on his face before he cupped his fists and said, "Many thanks, Senior Xiao, for the reminder. This junior will take this lesson to heart." "That would be best." "Good, you may leave." Xiao Yuyang waved his hand. Only then did Yang Kai head towards where the Azure Sun Temple's disciples were gathered, as he found a place to sit down. Currently, many cultivators were gathered together in groups, mainly with their respective sects and families, as they rested in the nameless mountain valley. But when counting the people here, they had decreased in number by more than a third compared to 33 days ago. The cultivators who weren't here now had obviously met some bad end in the Four Seasons realm. In this land, every sealed world and every trial ground would have risks along with opportunities, and every cultivator's path of growth would wander between life and death. This was a fate that every cultivator had to face, one that was absolutely inescapable. Cultivation was about survival of the fittest, and only the strongest would remain after the filtering out by an unforgiving world. As Yang Kai rested, Bian Yuqing and Ko Wu came to say their goodbyes to him. They were the only 2 from Blue Feather Sect who came to the Four Seasons realm this time, and could be considered lucky as despite not obtaining many opportunities or reaping too big a harvest, they had at least both managed to return safely. Since the Four Seasons realm was about to close, the 2 of them would naturally return to Blue Feather Sect. Yang Kai chatted with them for a while and then watched them leave. He didn't waste his energy on telling Bian Yuqing to not tell Wu Mengshan about him, because he knew that Bian Yuqing would definitely go back and tell everything about her experience to Wu Mengshan, meaning that Wu Mengshan would learn about his information. Yang Kai was still rather wary of Wu Mengshan, but for now, he could only resolve to absolutely not meet that old bat until he became strong enough. Otherwise, he might fall prey to Wu Mengshan's tricks. About 1 hour later, the heavens and earth shook as the nameless mountain valley's light door suddenly vanished. The Four Seasons realm had completely closed itself off now, and only the heavens knew when it would open again. The Four Seasons realm experience was completely over now, and many cultivators from various sects and families began to leave. Gao Shueting talked to Xiao Yuyang for a while longer before she summoned her ship that took the Azure Sun Temple's disciples back. The Azure Sun Temple didn't suffer many losses. Apart from the outsider Yang Kai, 19 disciples had come this time, and only 4 were missing now. This amount of loss was far less than the average, so it was acceptable to Gao Shueting. Regardless, some of them had still died, so the disciples were in low spirits on the way back. Most simply sat in silence as they took inventory of their harvest from the Four Seasons realm. Suddenly, Yang Kai heard Gao Shueting calling out to him. Hurriedly opening his eyes, he saw that Elder Gao of the Azure Sun Temple had her back to him as she stood at the bow of the ship. Elder Gao's long hair and sleeves fluttered in the wind as she seemed to be gazing at the distant scenery, her elegant posture adding a hint of noble beauty to this place. Yang Kai didn't dare to be rude as he hurriedly walked towards her. He stood not far behind her, cupped his fists, and asked, "Elder Gao, do you have some instruction for me?" Gao Shueting stayed silent for a time before suddenly saying, "Do you understand the meaning of Senior Zhao's last words to you?" Yang Kai fell silent for a moment before replying, "What Senior Zhao meant was that I should choose one between the martial Dao and alchemic Dao to focus on." "Indeed." Gao Shueting nodded lightly before she turned her beautiful face towards him, her eyes flashing as she stared at Yang Kai before she opened her red lips slightly to say, "You have extraordinary aptitude for both the martial Dao and alchemic Dao, and in time you will definitely become tremendously successful in one of these two domains. Perhaps you'll even reach a height that I am unable to, but one's time and strength are always limited. If you choose to pursue the peak of the martial Dao, you will have to abandon the alchemic Dao, and vice versa. It is impossible for you to concentrate on both of these domains." Senior Zhao spoke, "Thinking for your sake. Junior understands." Yang Kai nodded with a serious expression. "It's good that you understand. There's nothing else I need to say. Then Junior shall take his leave." Yang Kai bowed slightly. He was rather surprised that Gao Shueting had called for him just for this. However, he was rather touched, as Gao Shueting showed care for him, despite him not being a disciple of Azure Sun Temple. It would have been impossible for her to tell him all this if she didn't care. Yang Kai had just turned around when he suddenly heard her speaking from behind. "Those extraordinary treasure pills, are there really none left?" Yang Kai hurriedly turned around again, but saw that Gao Shueting had her back to him and wasn't moving at all, as if she wasn't the one who said those words. Yang Kai stood where he was and furrowed his brow as he thought. Not daring to say another word, he could only return to his spot and sit down cross-legged again. Has this woman realized something? A woman's intuition is truly frightening. Several days slowly passed by. On this day, a beautiful ship arrived at the Azure Sun Mountain Range, and all the Dao Source Realm cultivators standing on board had recovered from the gloom of losing their companions by now. Everyone stood up as they stared out at the familiar scenery below them. "Wahahaha! I, Xianxia, have returned." Xianxia had his hands on his hips as he laughed loudly, as if wanting to make sure everyone knew he had returned, his voice echoing above the mountains as the ship proceeded forward. His voice was so loud that the Azure Sun Temple disciples moving around below all immediately raised their heads. "Can you not act more mature?" Xiao Bai coldly glared at him with an expression of disdain. "Xiao Bai, you should be happy to return home. So here, come shout together with your senior brother." Xiaxing walked over to Xiao Bai's side and grasped the latter's shoulder as he spoke. "Who would want to shout with you?" A vein started bulging on Xiao Bai's forehead. "So embarrassing." Morong Xiao Zhao's face reddened. "Humph." Xiao Bai coldly snorted as he gave Xiaxing a sidelong glance while saying, "Look at other sects' eldest senior brothers like Wu Chong and Luo Yuan. All of them are cold and calm, giving their junior brothers and junior sisters a sense of reliability. But what about you? You act like a clown every day. How did someone like you actually become the eldest senior brother? So you wanted a cold and cool senior brother?" Xiaxing suddenly adopted a serious expression as a chill emanated from his eyes. his smiling expression instantly being replaced with a domineering glare that seemed to say that none below heaven were his equal. At this moment, Xiaxiang's aura changed tremendously. Other senior brothers can do it, so this senior brother can naturally do it as well, he quickly said while acting all serious. Morong Xiao was stunned at the sight. Her small mouth formed a circle as she covered her mouth with her small hand as her beautiful eyes trembled. Do you feel like I'm reliable now? Xiaxiang looked directly at her while asking in a deep and masculine voice. Do you want to abandon everything without care and jump into this senior brother's wide chest and solid arms? Morong Xiao pursed her red lips and cautiously answered. Senior brother, your killing intent is leaking. Stop messing around. Gao Shueting gave Xiaxiang a sidelong glance while lightly stating, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Stop learning from our temple master. Otherwise, you won't be able to find a woman in the future. Really? Xiaxiang seemed as if he had suddenly been struck by lightning, taking major damage and breaking out into a cold sweat as he muttered. And other sect masters all have wives and countless concubines, but our temple master is still old and single. His face paled as if he had seen something incredibly frightening before raising his head to Gao Shueting and saying, Elder Gao, temple master is so pitiful, so have you ever considered, again? Before he could finish, Gao Shueting suddenly swung her sleeve and immediately tossed him off the ship. As the ship flew off, Xiaxiang's pitiful wails could be heard from the distance. Don't do, won't die. Xiao Baiyi didn't sympathize with him one bit, even coldly snorting at the sight. Morong Xiao was actually worried and turned around while intending to beg for mercy for Xiaxiang. But when she saw Gao Shueting's terrifying expression, she instantly swallowed her words back down. The ship descended to Azure Sun Temple's main peak, Myriad Saints Peak, causing a tremendous gust as it approached. Below were Temple Master Wen Zishan, Vice Temple Master Qiu Ran, Elder Chan Qian, and the other senior leaders who were waiting with serious expressions. Before the ship landed, several Emperor Realm divine senses scanned the ship, and the masters present instantly gained a precise understanding of how many disciples had been lost on this trip. Although a few elite disciples had been lost, luckily, the ones they placed the greatest expectations upon had all safely returned, so everyone couldn't help heaving sighs of relief as their serious expressions became slightly less tense. The ship landed moments later. All the disciples leapt down while Gao Shueting waved her hand and stowed away the ship. Ha ha ha, little Shueting. I really missed you after not seeing you for so many days. Here, give uncle a hug. Wen Zishan laughed loudly while opening up his arms as he took large steps towards Gao Shueting. Xing. Sword chi flashed as killing intent erupted. Wen Zishan broke out into a cold sweat as he stopped a meter in front of Gao Shueting. A cherry blossom long sword pressed against his neck, while Gao Shueting wore an icy expression. Gripping her sword tightly, she coldly snapped, I'll kill you if you dare to take one more step forward. When Zishan didn't dare to move. Sigh. Qiu Ran held his forehead and sighed with a helpless expression. Temple Master, please behave with some dignity. It was just a joke. When Zishan chuckled before jumping back and landing at his original position, the next moment, his expression turned serious as he stated, in any case, this temple master congratulates everyone for returning safely. All of you are future pillars of our noble temple. All of you have worked hard to pass this trial. The disciples didn't say anything as they simply watched him in silence. Gao Shueting also slowly put away her sword. This temple master shall remember all of your accomplishments, and your fellow brothers and sisters' deaths shall also not be in vain. Now, those among you who received extra star seals, come with this temple master. The others are dismissed. Yes. At his command, everyone responded in a loud voice. There were almost 20 disciples gathered, but most dispersed at this point, leaving only 4 behind. Yang Kai turned around and saw that apart from himself, only Xiao Baiyi, Morong Xiao, and another second-order Dao Source Realm cultivator youth, whose name he didn't know, remained. Although this cultivator was also a disciple of Azure Sun Temple and had entered the Four Seasons realm, Yang Kai had barely interacted with this youth, so he knew nothing about him. Still, when judging the youth's aura and disposition, he didn't seem like someone that was difficult to get along with. "Where's that little brat Xiaxiang?" Moments later, when Zishan turned to Gao Shueting and asked curiously, as he was surprised to not see Xiaxiang here. With a slightly dark expression, when Zishan began to worry if something had happened to Xiaxiang in the Four Seasons realm. Even Qiuran thought the same thing, and his face couldn't help going white as he exclaimed, "Elder Gao, could it be that Xiaxiang?" Gao Shueting replied calmly, "No, he'll be here soon." As she spoke, a figure flew over from the horizon, shouting all the way, "Wait for me!" Moments later, Xiaxiang landed in front of everyone as he looked towards Gao Shueting with a face full of complaints, shouting out pitifully, "Elder Gao, next time you should notify this disciple before you make a move. This disciple wasn't mentally prepared. Little brat, just what did you do?" When Zishan reached out and knocked Xiaxiang's head, causing Xiaxiang's neck to shrink. "Temple Master, what are you doing?" Xiaxiang felt really aggrieved as he held his head. When Zishan coldly snorted, "It's obvious to see that you made Elder Gao angry. Is this Temple Master not allowed to teach you a lesson?" Xiaxiang blinked as his expression became speechless. "All right, since you're here, then all of you should follow this Temple Master." When Zishan also glanced at Yang Kai as he spoke, "You come as well." A short time later, all the higher-ups of Azure Sun Temple arrived at the large main hall on Myriad Saints Peak, with the disciples and Yang Kai standing in the center of the floor. When Zishan sat on his seat above and glanced down as he spoke, "Elder Gao, you were the leader of the team that went to the Four Seasons realm this time, so you should understand the situation in detail. Please tell us how many star seals each of these people obtained." Upon hearing this, Gao Shueting answered calmly, "Although I didn't compare with the other sects, judging from the number of star seals that these disciples obtained, their harvest should have been pretty good." After saying this, she turned her pretty face and added, "Xiaxiang obtained 4 star seals, Xiao Baiyi obtained 2, Murong Xiao 2, and Chen Muji got 2. After hearing this, Yang Kai finally learned that the second-order Dao Source Realm youth's name was Chen Muji. Gao Shueting paused for a moment here before continuing. "There were 3 other disciples who obtained 1 each, but they are not here right now." When Zishan nodded lightly in understanding. Before heading out on this journey, Azure Sun Temple had announced that any disciple who obtained a star seal in the Four Seasons realm would obtain the right to enter the Shattered Star Sea. Thus, the 3 disciples who obtained 1 star seal apiece had all kept their star seals without needing to hand them over. Those who had come here were the ones who had obtained extra star seals. "What about this little brat?" When Zishan glanced at Yang Kai, Gao Shueting's expression became slightly complex, remaining silent for a time before she finally muttered, "He obtained 7. What? Did I hear incorrectly? That many?" The higher-ups were all Emperor Realm Masters with extraordinary mental discipline. However, they still couldn't hide their astonishment when they heard that Yang Kai actually obtained 7 star seals all by himself. They all glanced at him inquisitively with looks of astonishment, as if they were reassessing him. The temple's top disciple, Xiaxiang, had only obtained 4, even with his powerful third-order Dao Source Realm cultivation. On the other hand, Yang Kai only had first-order cultivation, so how had he obtained 7? Isn't this brat's luck a little too outrageous? Everyone was thinking this as they secretly felt that Yang Kai must possess heaven-defying luck. If that wasn't the case, how else could he have obtained so many star seals? Yang Kai remained calm in front of everyone's eyes. 7 was indeed the total number of star seals that he obtained in the Four Seasons realm. The first one was the diamond-shaped star seal that he obtained in the Two Seasons mountain range. At the time, Wu Chong and the others had been chasing a monster beast which had unfortunately run into Yang Kai as it was fleeing and wound up dying at the latter's hands. Yang Kai didn't get any opportunities to receive a star seal after that. Only when he was guarding the extraordinary treasure lotus and killed 2 cultivators had he obtained 2 more. In the end, he made a trade with Wu Chong and obtained 4 more. Although luck certainly played a part in being able to obtain so many, strength was also a necessary requirement. Star seals weren't actually that easy to obtain, because there weren't very many of them, and if it wasn't for Yang Kai killing 2 cultivators and making a trade with Wu Chong, perhaps when the Four Seasons realm closed, he would have only obtained the first one he got by luck. There were some reasons involved that I will explain to you afterwards. However, he indeed obtained 7 star seals by himself. Gao Shueting spoke up. The reason she spoke of was naturally about the extraordinary treasure pill. When Zishan nodded lightly and made a sound of affirmation before a smile covered his face as he stated, "Very good. In that case, 19 people from the temple can enter the Shattered Star Sea when it opens. That's wonderful news. If the trial in the Four Seasons realm was considered a small event at the level of simple life experience, then the Shattered Star Sea was a place where one could seek enlightenment of their own martial Tao. Such a place wasn't one where anyone could just enter. First, a star seal was required as an entry ticket. Second, one would have to possess the strength necessary to pass through the entrance of the Shattered Star Sea. Both were necessary in order to go through. In other words, even if someone possessed a star seal, they would still be unable to enter the Shattered Star Sea unless they were strong enough. Azure Sun Temple had 19 quotas for entering, but it was unknown how many could actually enter in the end. Still, this amount was much larger than that of most other sects and great forces. When Zishan was naturally overjoyed. "This is a sign of great fortune for our temple," Qiu Ren uttered happily, stroking his snow-white beard in happiness and satisfaction. "Let's not waste time. Little Qian, gather their extra star seals." When Zishan gestured with his eyes towards Chen Qian nodded and got up. With a wave of her hand, an artifact that resembled an incense burner appeared in her grip. It was unknown what this artifact was ordinarily used for, but it seemed to be of decent grade. Various runes appeared on the incense burner artifact's surface, making it seem rather mysterious. Slowly, she walked over to the waiting disciples. Then starting with Chan Muji, she said in a gentle tone, "Just relax." "Yes." Chan Muji answered and took a deep breath, causing his expression to immediately become calm. Seeing that he was prepared, Chan Qian held the incense burner with one hand and made a seal with her other hand before poking several points on Chan Muji's arm. Chan Muji suddenly retreated a few steps with a muffled cough, his expression turning a little pale, as if his foundation had suffered some damage. At the same time, a beam of light suddenly shot out from his body. Chan Qian was quite swift and accurate in her movements as she waved towards the beam of light. An invisible force immediately bound the beam of light and dragged it into the incense burner. Yang Kai was quite astonished as he watched. Back in the Four Seasons realm, when he was trading with Wu Chong, the latter had used a secret technique to force out the extra star seals from himself so that Yang Kai could obtain them. But now, it seemed that apart from that method, it was also possible to retrieve star seals from another as well. After realizing this, Yang Kai felt that he needed to be more careful when traveling the star boundary in the future. Otherwise, someone with ulterior motives might target his star seals and bring more trouble upon him. After that, Chen Qian did the same to extract the extra star seals from Xiaoshang, Morong Xiaoxiao, and Xiao Baiyi. Yang Kai witnessed quite clearly that no matter the cultivation or strength of the person, they all seemed to take some damage after having the star seal stripped from their body. Even Xiaoshang couldn't help shaking a bit as his face went slightly pale. It seemed that this forceful extraction method had its disadvantages. It didn't take long for Chen Qian to move in front of Yang Kai. This elder Chen was rather petite, and when she stood in front of Yang Kai, she was actually shorter than him by a head. She raised her head to glance at Yang Kai as she said in a light tone, "If you're prepared, I'll begin." "Wait a moment." Yang Kai suddenly spoke up. "What's wrong?" Upon hearing this, Chen Qian furrowed her delicate brow and tilted her head at Yang Kai, not knowing what he wanted to do. Everyone else also glanced in his direction. Yang Kai had a calm expression as he glanced towards when Zishan cupped his fists and said, "Junior is willing to turn over all his extra star seals, since this was what was agreed upon beforehand and all I need is one for myself. However, before that, Junior would like to ask Temple Master one a question." "Oh." When Zishan smiled upon hearing this and nodded as he answered, "Say it." What do you need from this temple master? Yang Kai replied. As Elder Gao previously mentioned, all extra star seals must be turned over to the temple, and this junior was only able to enter the Four Seasons realm thanks to the quota provided by Azure Sun Temple. So naturally I have no objections in giving my 6 star seals to the temple. He paused for a moment before saying, Elder Gao also mentioned before that after turning over the additional star seals, the temple would give an appropriate reward. So, it's about this matter. When Zishan chuckled. You can rest assured about this matter. Although you're not a disciple of my divine temple, we won't bully you, and we'll give you the appropriate reward that you deserve. May I make a request then? Yang Kai inquired. What's your request? Let's hear it. When Zishan looked at him with some interest. Temple Master, one should still remember this junior's original goal in entering the Four Seasons realm. Yes? Yang Kai replied with a question instead of answering. When Zishan thought for a moment before nodding. For the tribulation fruit? Right. I still haven't asked you yet. Did you manage to obtain it during this trip? Yang Kai shook his head. No, but I did discover a tribulation fruit tree in the realm of winter. Unfortunately, it seems someone got there first and picked the fruit. That's truly unfortunate. When Zishan also had an expression of pity. Junior would like to request the temple's assistance in finding that spirit fruit. If Temple Master Wen can agree, I'll gladly hand over all 6 of my star seals. Yang Kai quickly said. After Yang Kai said this, the Emperor Realm Masters in the temple couldn't help furrowing their brows. It wasn't that Yang Kai was asking for too much with his request, but rather, this was truly difficult to do. Countless sects and families from almost the entire southern territory had entered the Four Seasons realm, and nobody had seen who obtained the tribulation fruit from the realm of winter. If Azure Sun Temple tried to search for that person, they would have to invest a tremendous amount of manpower and effort. What's more, even if they found who obtained the fruit, it still might not be possible to obtain it. The other party would definitely ask for something in exchange. In other words, Azure Sun Temple would have to pay a certain amount before being able to obtain the tribulation fruit. It would be fine if some small sect or a disciple from some small family had obtained the tribulation fruit, as Azure Sun Temple would simply need to apply some pressure for the other party to submit. However, it would be worrisome if a disciple from Orthodoxy Temple, Heavenly Martial Holy Land, or even Star Soul Palace had obtained the fruit. At that time, it would no longer be just about a single spirit fruit, but rather an issue between 2 top-level sects. If it wasn't dealt with properly, then a tremendous favor might be owed in the end. Yang Kai might not know all the complex relationships between the top sects of the Southern Territory, but the Azure Sun Temple's leaders did. That was why everyone fell silent after Yang Kai made this request. Upon seeing them like this, Yang Kai simply remained quiet and waited instead of urging them to answer. When Zishan finally spoke up after a long time, if I recall correctly, that tribulation fruit wasn't something you needed for yourself, but was for someone else, correct? Indeed, Yang Kai nodded. Since you weren't able to obtain it in the Four Seasons realm, you've already put forward your best effort, so why continue pursuing the issue? You could instead ask for something beneficial to yourself, for instance. At this point, when Zishan suddenly took on a dangerous aura as his words became filled with extremely strong temptation. His voice turned low as he continued, this temple master could help stimulate your potential and greatly increase your cultivation. Yang Kai furrowed his brow as he answered. I made a promise, and promises should be kept. Temple master, why test me like this? Ha. When Zishan didn't feel awkward at all about being seen through, instead smiling as he heartily declared, good, this temple master will agree to your request. The temple shall help you to search for the tribulation fruit. It must be found within 3 months, Yang Kai quickly said. If it takes any longer than that, I'm afraid the one who needs it won't be able to endure any longer. 3 months is more than enough. When Zishan smiled slightly as he turned to look at Xiaoran, Vice Temple Master, you shall be in charge of this matter. You must deliver the tribulation fruit to this little brat surnamed Yang within 3 months. Xiaoran stood up, cupped his fists, and answered, subordinate understands. I will absolutely live up to the temple master's expectations. After saying this, he actually immediately left the hall, seemingly preparing to deploy some people to search for the tribulation fruit right away. Yang Kai couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief seeing this. With a powerful sect like Azure Sun Temple helping to search for the spirit fruit, it would definitely greatly increase the chance of success. If even Azure Sun Temple was unable to find it now, then Yang Kai really wouldn't be able to do anything and would have to return to Maplewood City and inform Qin Zhao Yang of what happened. Will this suffice? When Zishan smiled and looked at Yang Kai gently nodded, turned to look at Chan Qian, and continued, "Please go ahead, Elder Chan." Chan Qian didn't say a word as she scanned Yang Kai with her divine sense. She then used one hand to hold the incense burner, while her other hand made a seal before she poked Yang Kai several times. The next instant, Yang Kai felt a warm energy reverberate inside his body, and a flow of heat appeared on his arm. It felt as if something had shot forth, and at the same time, an indescribable feeling of discomfort arose in his heart. He couldn't help groaning slightly when this happened. Eh? When Zishan had a look of astonishment in his eyes when he witnessed this. That was because everyone before Yang Kai had differing degrees of discomfort when their extra star seals were stripped from their bodies. Morong Xiao Xiao, Xiao Bai Yi, and Chun Muji had taken several steps backward, and although Xiaoshang hadn't retreated, his face had still paled. Although Yang Kai's reaction was similar to Xiaoshang's, Yang Kai had 6 star seals stripped from him, yet he still stood right where he was despite only having a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivation. This was really shocking. The others noticed this as well and couldn't help showing interest in him. Shwa shwa shwa. 6 beams of light flew into the air, but Chan Qian immediately bound and dragged them into the incense burner. After Chan Qian finished, she finally spoke to Yang Kai in a gentle tone. "I left a 5-pointed star seal for you. Use it well if you really enter the Shattered Star Sea." "Many thanks, Elder Chun." Yang Kai took a deep breath in order to calm the roiling vitality in his chest. Of the 7 star seals that he obtained, the highest level one was a 5-pointed star seal, which he obtained from trading with Wuchang. As for the 6-pointed, 7-pointed, or 8-pointed star seals that Lan Sun had previously mentioned, Yang Kai had not seen any such thing, so he was clueless about whether they truly existed in this world or not. Overall, Yang Kai was quite satisfied with the final result. Chan Qian had also been considerate of him and left him the highest level star seal rather than leaving him a random one. Yang Kai still didn't know what difference there was between the star seal's different levels, but now wasn't the time to ask. Regardless, he was going to stay in Azure Sun Temple for some time, so he intended to find someone to ask later when he had the chance. "All of you have worked hard. You may go and rest now." When Zishan waved his hand at the Dao Source Realm disciples before adding, "As for the temple's reward for you, we'll discuss it and inform you later." "Yes." Xiaoshang and the others responded before bowing and exiting the hall. After they left, Elder Di Rong finally muttered, "Such a good seedling." Although he didn't refer to anyone with his words, everyone present knew who he was talking about. Naturally, it was Yang Kai. "It seems you all have noticed as well." When Zishan smiled slightly, "This little brat surnamed Yang, he's a bit different from others. I think that Elder Gao and Elder Chun should understand better than anyone else, since the two of them watched the entire fight between Yang Kai and Shui back on Soaring Swallow Peak." Chun Qian nodded and confirmed, "That's right. Shui wasn't even a match for him. He's not just a bit different from others. He's a 1 in a billion genius." Gao Shueting quickly said, "Oh? Elder Gao has such a high assessment of him? Isn't that a bit much?" Di Rong turned to look at Gao Shueting and exclaimed in disbelief. "You wouldn't think that if you knew what he did in the 4 Seasons realm," Gao Shueting replied in a light tone. When Zishan smiled as he asked, "Since you say that, did he do something incredible in the 4 Seasons realm? Does successfully refining a batch of extraordinary treasure pills count as something amazing?" Gao Shueting turned to look at him. Everyone's expressions changed dramatically after hearing this. "Extraordinary treasure pills?" Di Rong shouted. "The legendary pill that can permanently increase a person's chance of breaking through to the Emperor realm after taking it? I don't know if the legends are true or not, but he indeed refined extraordinary treasure pills. In that case, an extraordinary treasure lotus appeared in the Four Seasons realm this time, when Zishan arched his eyebrows. Indeed, Gao Shueting nodded as she explained everything that she knew. She also explained just why Yang Kai came to possess so many star seals. After hearing this, the emperors present all fell silent. Although this boy is just a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, not only does he possess astonishing strength, he's actually a Dao Source grade alchemist as well. Di Rong's expression was quite animated as he muttered this. He's also no ordinary Dao Source grade alchemist. Chan Qian answered in a low voice. He successfully refined 4 pills in a single batch of that grade. He has to be at least a Dao Source grade mid-rank or even high-rank alchemist in order to accomplish this. No newly promoted Dao Source grade alchemist could possibly do such a thing. When Elder Gao said that he was 1 in a billion, it seems she was not exaggerating. When Zishan quickly said, out of all the rising stars in Dao Source Realm, you probably can't find anyone in the entire star field that could accomplish what he did apart from a disciple of a wondrous pill great emperor. Right? Perhaps there are those with more aptitude than him in the martial Dao, and perhaps there are also those with more talent than him in the alchemic Dao, but there's probably none who are as skilled as him in both simultaneously. Temple Master, have you considered recruiting such an excellent seedling into our sect? This boy doesn't seem to belong to any other force, right? Di Rong had an eager expression as he made this recommendation. When Zishan smiled upon hearing this and remarked, of course it would be great if such a good seedling joined the temple. Still, it depends on his own opinion, but we could certainly try. After saying that, he then turned to look at Gao Shueting. Elder Gao, among all of us, you know him the best, so you should take charge of this matter. I don't understand him that well, Gao Shueting replied with a calm expression. But since Temple Master has given the command, subordinate shall try. When Zishan nodded lightly and then changed the topic, in that case, let us discuss what reward shall be appropriate for those disciples. Yang Kai returned to the Azure Sun Temple's soaring Swallow Peak. The palace that had been wrecked last time during his fight with Shui had already been repaired, and after Yang Kai entered, he opened the various barriers and rested for half a day before he began taking inventory of his harvest from the Four Seasons realm. Although he didn't get the tribulation fruit he was searching for on this trip to the Four Seasons realm, he still gained quite a significant harvest. Without mentioning the monster beast cores of various grades and amounts, just the spirit herbs, most of which were of the ice attribute, that he transplanted into the small sealed world's medicine garden was already a great harvest. Yang Kai had stayed in the realm of winter the longest, and with the little snowflake to lead the way for him, it could be said that at least 10% of all the treasures in the realm of winter had landed in his possession. Yang Kai had harvested the spirit herbs and immediately transplanted them into his medicine garden at the time. The sealed world beads medicine garden had a special environment that was highly suitable for growing herbs, and with the immortal tree providing a shocking amount of vitality, there was no need to worry that these herbs would wither. In fact, these herbs would instead have their growth greatly accelerated. All these herbs' medicinal ages would increase 100 times faster than in the outside world. Apart from these, there was also a flowing time fruit that Yang Kai had obtained from the Flowing Time Temple. Although this item wasn't very useful for martial Dao cultivation, it had a certain special effect if you managed to refine it into a flowing time pill. This effect was something that countless cultivators would definitely desire. Taking one pill would cause a person's body's condition to return back to how it was several dozen, hundreds, or even thousands of years ago. This was something that would tremendously attract a cultivator whose lifespan was almost up. This was even more so for women of all ages. After all, which woman wouldn't want to become younger? Although the flowing time pill's effect wasn't as strong as the legendary everlasting face pill, which could make one appear young forever, the two pills had different effects, so it was quite difficult to compare which was actually superior. If an old woman with a face covered in wrinkles had to choose, she would definitely choose the flowing time pill instead of the everlasting face pill because the everlasting face pill would no longer have any effect on her face, while the flowing time pill would allow her to rejuvenate herself. But if a young and beautiful woman had to choose, the everlasting face pill would definitely be more attractive. Yang Kai secretly planned to find a chance to gather some herbs after he left Azure Sun Temple to refine the flowing time pill. Perhaps the pill would have a miraculous effect at some critical moment. Apart from these, there was also a random assortment of items. These items included the treasures Yang Kai obtained from killing others, as well as the spirit energy hearts he obtained in the flowing time temple from destroying the guardian puppets. These were basically useless to Yang Kai though, so he planned to exchange them for source crystals. A jade bottle appeared in Yang Kai's hand a moment later, and after opening it, he immediately saw a spirit pill-like object. Emperor Authority Bead. It was the Emperor Authority Bead that he had obtained from Wu Chang. An Emperor Authority Bead had an Emperor Realm Master's full force attack sealed within. It would be difficult to imagine how powerful it was, and it was also similarly difficult to create. This was a consumable item that only a second-order or stronger Emperor Realm Master was capable of refining, and was usually given to one's descendants for the sake of protecting their lives. Whenever an Emperor Realm Master created an Emperor Authority Bead, they would be weakened for quite a long period of time, which meant that Emperor Realm Masters weren't willing to craft these unless it was absolutely necessary. Even if they crafted one, it would only be on a rare occasion, and they wouldn't craft many. Thus, Emperor Authority Beads were considered a rare treasure even throughout the entire star boundary. This Emperor Authority Bead had come from the Flowing Time Temple and was something left behind by the Flowing Time Great Emperor. Although Yang Kai didn't know when Flowing Time Great Emperor had refined this bead, its value and level already far surpassed that of an ordinary Emperor Authority Bead. Perhaps it had a Great Emperor level attack sealed inside, or maybe a third-order Emperor Realm level attack. At any rate, this was a life-saving item that Yang Kai could use at a critical moment. Even if he was surrounded by thousands of troops or masters, he could still overturn the dangerous situation with this. Yang Kai put the bead away with extreme caution in a location where he could easily retrieve it from his space ring before finally focusing on the other 3 beads in front of him. These 3 beads were identical in shape and size. The only thing different about them was their color. One was fiery red. Yang Kai obtained it in the Flowing Time Temple. The temple had contained many treasures back then, and Lan Xun had basically identified them all. The only unidentifiable item was this red bead, and in fact, Lan Xun didn't even know what this bead's purpose was. Yang Kai remembered the words that Xianxia had told him through Zhang Ruoxi. If he could enter the deepest part of the temple, then he must take the item that appeared to be the most useless. At the time, this red bead seemed to be the most useless one among all the treasures. No matter if it was the Pseudo-Emperor Artifact, Supreme Divine Water, Emperor Aura, or Emperor Authority Bead, they were all rare treasures that were hardly ever seen in the outside world. That was why Yang Kai had directly targeted this bead. Nobody else had tried to fight with him for this bead, so he had gotten it quite easily. The second bead was green. Yang Kai had obtained it in the realm of Winter's Lake. The third bead was the one he had obtained from trading with the round-faced woman from 8 Paths sect. Yang Kai never would have traded away an extraordinary treasure pill with this round-faced woman if it weren't for this bead. This third bead was faint yellow, like a withered leaf, making one think of how flowers and leaves would start to die in autumn. These 3 beads of 3 different colors all had no reaction whatsoever when Yang Kai tried to inject his source chi or divine sense into them. Aside from being different colors, they were impossible to tell apart. Thinking that these beads came from the 4 seasons realm, though, it was quite easy to associate them with spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The green bead obviously represented spring, which was filled with vitality, the red summer, and the bleak yellow, autumn. There was one missing season. Only the bead of winter's whereabouts were unknown. Yang Kai secretly felt that he might be able to figure out the secret hidden inside these 4 beads if he could find the final bead of winter. However, the 4 seasons realm had already closed, so it was impossible to look for it even if he had wanted to. Yang Kai looked at the beads for a while and then sighed. He then put away the 4 seasons beads as he decided to name them. If fate permitted, perhaps he would be able to find the final bead, but if it was not meant to be, perhaps he would never see the final bead in his lifetime. The star boundary was immensely vast, so it would be incredibly difficult to find a single bead of winter. Overall though, Yang Kai's harvest this time was not small. There was also no need to mention the benefits he gained from the flowing time force through the flowing time steps, or the Emperor artifact Pink Cloud's phoenix robe that Zhang Ruoxi obtained. Yang Kai organized his spoils and tossed all the random items that he couldn't use at all into the small sealed world, giving them to his embodiment. These items included the spirit pills found in other space rings, various ores, and even some artifacts. Regardless, the embodiment was cultivating the heaven-devouring battle law and had the stone puppet clan's innate divine ability. So it could devour anything in the world that possessed qi. Yang Kai calculated that the current embodiment was even capable of devouring an emperor artifact and absorbing it as a foundation to become even stronger. Moments later, Yang Kai made a seal with his hands as his body flashed straight into the small sealed world. He used his divine sense to scan and imprint every single blade of grass in the small sealed world into his mind. The embodiment was cultivating right now. Stone puppets did not know fatigue, so Yang Kai's embodiment was capable of cultivating without rest. Meanwhile, the two living people in the small sealed world, Zhang Ruoxi and Hua Qingxi, were both sitting cross-legged in their own buildings. Perhaps because the sealed world bead had devoured a large amount of spirit qi from the spirit qi sea, Yang Kai felt that this place's cultivation environment was obviously better than before. Judging from this, it seemed he should have the sealed world bead absorb some more world energy from the outside world if he had a chance, at least when he encountered another area with extremely dense world energy like last time. Yang Kai used his divine sense to gather the world energy in the small sealed world towards the houses so Zhang Ruoxi and Hua Qingxi would be able to cultivate more efficiently. Zhang Ruoxi had previously risen to the First Order Origin Returning Realm in the Four Seasons Realm Spirit Qi Sea, and then again to the Second Order on the Flowing Time Steps, so right now she was busy consolidating her cultivation. However, Yang Kai did not dare to underestimate her because of her weak cultivation. Yang Kai had witnessed many inconceivable things when he brought Zhang Ruoxi into the Four Seasons realm this time. He clearly remembered that when Zhang Ruoxi was breaking through to the next great realm, the Origin Returning Realm, a gigantic female phantom had suddenly appeared behind her. This woman was like a giant version of a more mature Zhang Ruoxi, and when this phantom opened her mouth, she sucked in the entire world energy baptism meant for Zhang Ruoxi, allowing the latter to break through in an instant without any difficulties. Afterwards, inside the Flowing Time Temple, right when Zhang Ruoxi was no longer able to bear the rising flowing time force from the flowing time steps, the divine spirit Xianxia had acted to save her life, and even gifted her the Pink Cloud's phoenix robe. Yang Kai refused to believe that Zhang Ruoxi didn't have some sort of secret. Xianxia was a vicious beast that was a famous existence even in ancient times. Any cultivator that met him would barely have a chance of remaining alive. Yet such a divine spirit willingly saved a young girl like Zhang Ruoxi. Xianxia had seen something in Zhang Ruoxi that Yang Kai didn't know about. There was also the space spirit jade. Why had it only reacted to Zhang Ruoxi? And what was the scene that had flashed before his eyes back when the jade activated? Zhang Ruoxi didn't know about her situation either, so Yang Kai couldn't find out by asking her. How could he possibly underestimate someone filled with such profound secrets that even Xianxia was willing to save and protect her? Yang Kai could only hope that Zhang Ruoxi's strength would quickly rise. Perhaps she would figure her secrets out on her own once she became strong enough. Since Zhang Ruoxi was cultivating, Yang Kai didn't disturb her. Instead, he flashed straight over to Hua Qingxi's building. He didn't make a sound when he appeared, but it seemed like Hua Qingxi sensed something and slightly furrowed her dainty brow. Opening her beautiful eyes, she couldn't help glaring at Yang Kai slightly while saying, "You should say something when you arrive. You almost scared me to death. I didn't know that you were such a scaredy cat." Yang Kai smiled widely. "The Four Seasons realm. Has it closed?" Hua Qingxi asked contemplatively. Yang Kai nodded. "How was your harvest?" "Okay." Hua Qingxi couldn't help but spit disdainfully as she spoke. "It's obvious that you're not telling the truth. Did you get something good?" Yang Kai smiled. "And something." As he spoke, he took out a round, white, and flawless spirit pill and held it between two fingers. "That's..." Hua Qingxi focused with her pretty eyes upon the spirit pill with a blank look of confusion. Although she didn't recognize the spirit pill or what it was used for, She instinctively felt that something was amazing about it and that it was highly likely to be an incredibly rare item. Do you want it? Yang Kai's mouth arched upwards in a subtle grin as he spoke. With our current relationship and the condition where you can kill me at any time, plus with this spirit pill's color and scent, I don't think that it's poison or that it's anything bad for me because there's no need for you to do such a thing. In that case, this spirit pill must really be useful for me, right? Xianxia began to carefully analyze the situation instead of immediately answering Yang Kai's question. I'm already a third-order Dao source realm cultivator, which is only a step away from the Emperor realm. There are very few spirit pills in the world that will be highly useful to me, and I've never seen or even heard of this type of spirit pill in your hand right now. Xianxia's beautiful eyes gradually lit up as she spoke. The only explanation then is that this spirit pill is the type that only exists in legend. She couldn't help but begin to breathe rapidly. I want it. I want it. Hurry and give it to me. However, Yang Kai didn't immediately give it to her. Instead, just looking over her with a teasing expression before muttering aloud, "Is it really good for a woman to say such words? Go to hell." Xianxia's face became red from the teasing as she glared at Yang Kai while gritting her teeth. Are you giving it to me or not? Yang Kai smiled slightly and refrained from teasing her further before tossing the spirit pill over. Xianxia happily caught the pill. She first put it right in front of her eyes to carefully observe it, but she still couldn't tell anything about it, so then she went up to sniff it and even used her pink tongue to gently lick it. Is there a need for this? Yang Kai had dark lines appearing on his forehead as he watched. Can't you just directly eat it? Just what kind of spirit pill is this? Xianxia raised her head and asked. Extraordinary treasure pill. Xianxia immediately froze upon hearing this as her beautiful eyes began to violently tremble while she stared at Yang Kai in disbelief. You know what it is? Yang Kai was rather surprised as he looked at her. Back in the Four Seasons realm, many cultivators hadn't known about the extraordinary treasure lotus and extraordinary treasure pill. It was only thanks to Lan Xun's explanation that everyone realized how precious they were. However, it was obvious from Xianxia's reaction that she knew what it was. Of course I know about it. Xianxia answered as if it was natural while her voice trembled slightly. This is the extremely famous, extraordinary treasure pill, which might not appear even once in 10,000 years. She wasn't exaggerating about this. Although the extraordinary treasure lotus might appear every once in a while, it was extremely difficult to get an extraordinary treasure pill, because the extraordinary treasure lotus's medicinal effects would disappear unless it was eaten or made into a pill within 3 hours. 2 conditions must be met in order for an extraordinary treasure pill to be created. The appearance of an extraordinary treasure lotus. At the same time, a highly skilled alchemist must also be nearby. It was highly difficult for both conditions to be met simultaneously, to the extent where it wouldn't happen even once in 10,000 years. Even if it happened, the alchemist present still needed to have the necessary adjuvants on hand and not fail in the refinement. Such mishaps had indeed happened in history before. An alchemist had been under too much pressure when creating the extraordinary treasure pill, which then led to a failure in refinement. It could thus be seen that extraordinary treasure pills were both precious and difficult to obtain. You really are quite knowledgeable. Yang Kai smiled widely. Where did you obtain this? The flowing time temple actually had something like this. Xianxia was still truly shocked and was unable to restore her emotions to normal for quite some time. I refined it myself, Yang Kai replied casually. You're also an alchemist? Xianxia's expression instantly became rather strange. What? I can't be. Yang Kai answered with some displeasure before urging her. Why are you still holding it? Hurry up and eat it. You're currently at the third-order Dao Source realm, so perhaps you can break through to the Emperor realm soon after swallowing it. You're really giving this to me? Although Xianxia was asking this, her hand clenched really tightly to the extraordinary treasure pill. Why would I take this out if I wasn't giving it to you? Yang Kai laughed at her silly question before thinking about it a bit and deciding to explain. Let me put it this way. You gave me your soul brand and now I don't need to fear you betraying me or exposing my secrets. That means the stronger you are, the more useful you are to me, so I also want you to reach the Emperor realm as quickly as possible so that later, when I travel around the world, if someone I don't like appears, I can let you out to bite them. Am I a dog? First, Hua Qingxi's pretty face showed her gratitude, but the more she listened, the colder her expression became, almost to the point that it frosted over. Stop wasting time and just eat it already, Yang Kai coldly snorted. I finally understand what kind of person you are. Hua Qingxi gave him a sidelong glance as she chuckled meaningfully. You have a sharp tongue but a soft heart. You want to apologize for all the terrible things you've done to me, but you're afraid your image will break down and you'll lose your dominant status if you just come out and say so. So you spout vicious lines to disguise your intent instead. Keep talking and I'll strip you naked and toss you outside. Yang Kai snapped at her threateningly, as he became angry out of embarrassment. Go ahead. A faint red blush appeared on Hua Qingxi's face, but she refused to act weak and even stuck out her chest and talked back to Yang Kai. If you dare to do that, then I'll announce to the whole world that I'm your woman, and watch just how much of a cuckold you become. So vicious. Yang Kai went pale with astonishment. Hee hee. Hua Qingxi laughed happily. If you're afraid, then obediently call me elder sister, and I might magnanimously show mercy and spare you. Fine, you win. Yang Kai retorted angrily before clenching his teeth and exiting the sealed world bead. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to take it anymore if he had to keep dealing with this crazy woman. Don't go. I'm not done talking yet. Hua Qingxi hurriedly called out to him, but there was no reaction. Quite a while later, she finally licked her red lips and glanced at the extraordinary treasure pill in her hand as she mumbled to herself. Now that I look back, if it wasn't for me witnessing a few of his secrets back then, I wouldn't have fallen to this current situation, but it was also because of falling here that I managed to get this extraordinary treasure pill. Fortune and misfortune really do go hand in hand. Forget it. For this one spirit pill alone, what does it matter if he imprisons me here for 100 years? She suddenly smiled slightly as she said this. Although she was now a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, she had no confidence she would be able to break through to the Emperor Realm anytime soon. Cultivation completely relied on solid accumulation over time that came from gradual improvement. But, until now, she had never managed to grasp the method to break through her bottleneck and touch the Emperor Realm's secrets. Back at Star Soul Palace, she had also taken the chance to ask some of the masters in the palace, but none of them were able to give her a satisfactory answer or guide her down a well-lit path. She secretly felt that if she didn't receive any special opportunity in this lifetime, it would be impossible for her to reach the Emperor Realm. But now, this incredibly rare chance had suddenly dropped onto her lap. It was natural for Hua Qingxi to feel excited inside. She knew of the extraordinary treasure pill precisely because she felt there was no hope for her to reach the Emperor Realm on her own, leading her to study many ancient books in Star Soul Palace while hoping to find some method to help herself. All of the ancient books she studied, however, had mentioned the extraordinary treasure pill. According to those ancient books, this was a spirit pill that could all but guarantee one broke through to the Emperor Realm as long their aptitude and effort weren't too lacking. What cultivator would possibly lack aptitude after cultivating to third-order Dao Source Realm, though? So saying it was a certainty wasn't an exaggeration. For instance, someone like Xianxia or Wuchang might rise to Emperor Realm within 5, or even 2 to 3 years after eating this pill. Someone with slightly worse aptitude might take 10 or 20 years, but what did it matter even if it took 100 years? It was worth waiting any amount of time as long as one could reach the Emperor Realm. This was a tremendous gift. Hua Qingxi thought she would be a lowly servant to Yang Kai for life after being forced to surrender her soul brand, never having expected that he would give her such a precious spirit pill like this. His generosity and openness were beyond her expectations. After some thought, Hua Qingxi no longer hesitated, as immediately stuffed the extraordinary treasure pill into her mouth. Since she already knew about the extraordinary treasure pill, she naturally knew that the sooner one ate it, the better. After she ate the spirit pill, she immediately sat down cross-legged and silently began to cultivate to refine the medicinal efficacies. At the same time, Yang Kai appeared with a wretched look on his face in the palace on soaring Swallow Peak, grumbling and cursing under his breath in frustration. Back when he refined that furnace of extraordinary treasure pills, unlike what he told the crowd, he hadn't refined just 4 pills, but 5. Back during the pill tribulation, Lu Yen had taken all the extraordinary treasure pills and hid them inside the sealed world bead. After the pill tribulation was dispersed, and before everyone regained their senses, Yang Kai had secretly put 4 pills back without anyone noticing. With Yang Kai's current cultivation and alchemy skills, it was largely thanks to luck that he had refined 5 extraordinary pills in one furnace. He originally thought he would only be able to create 3 pills, so the results had given him a pleasant surprise. The only part that Yang Kai felt was a pity was that not a single pill with pill veins had appeared amongst the 5 spirit pills. This was understandable, though, as extraordinary treasure pills were difficult to refine in the first place, and it would truly be too heaven-defying if pill veins had also been formed. Over the next few days, Yang Kai remained on soaring Swallow Peak and calmly focused on cultivation while patiently waiting for news from the Azure Sun Temple. Searching for the tribulation fruit wasn't something that could be done in 1 or 2 days. Yang Kai had given the 3-month time limit entirely out of consideration for Qinyu, as any longer and she would not be able to survive. Azure Sun Temple was her and Yang Kai's only hope. Soaring Swallow Peak was in a remote location in Azure Sun Mountain Range, so it was quite quiet and nobody came to bother Yang Kai. However, Yang Kai didn't expect that a surprising guest would come to visit him a few days later. The visitor was actually Gao Xueting. He was surprised, but he did not neglect courtesy and performed the duties of a host by inviting Gao Xueting in and attending to her politely. He originally thought that Gao Xueting had some business with him, but it didn't happen the way that he expected. This icy Emperor Realm Master spent more than half a day with Yang Kai, but she simply acted like a senior inquiring about her junior's cultivation while also asking Yang Kai some questions about his own martial Dao. Yang Kai carefully thought things over as he answered each question, having no idea from Gao Xueting's unchanging expression if she was satisfied with the answers or not. It was rare to have a chance to be so close to an emperor, so Yang Kai also took the opportunity to ask some things that he didn't understand. Gao Xueting didn't hold back any knowledge she had and did her best to explain everything in an easily understandable manner. Yang Kai learned a lot. Before she left, Gao Xueting mentioned that she wanted to test how strong Yang Kai's divine sense was. Although Yang Kai didn't understand why, he didn't refuse, gathering his divine sense before sending it out towards Gao Xueting. She naturally received it without any difficulty. However, she did send a meaningful glance towards him, as if she could tell that he hadn't used his full strength. In the end, Gao Xueting gave Yang Kai a gift before she left. After Yang Kai saw off Gao Xueting, he still felt confused about why she had come to visit him. Judging from his interaction with her back at the Four Seasons realm, Gao Xueting wasn't the type who actively tried to get along with others. It wasn't that she had a violent temper or a bad personality. Rather, it was just her innate icy nature and the cold look she kept on her face that seemed to tell strangers that they should remain 1,000 kilometers away from her. Yang Kai could actually sense that Gao Xueting wasn't a bad person. Yang Kai furrowed his brow slightly as he glanced at the item in his hand while muttering to himself, "This doesn't make sense at all. What was she doing?" He was holding the gift that Gao Xueting gave him before she left, a small shield the size of a palm. Light swirled around this shield, giving it a mystical appearance, and the aura fluctuations it gave off were definitely not weak. Gao Xueting had called this artifact the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield. This was actually a Dao Source Grade low-rank artifact. Not only that, it was a Soul-type artifact, something quite out of the ordinary. Soul-type artifacts were typically created from rather special materials, and they could only be driven by a cultivator's divine sense. Source Qi was completely useless on these artifacts. They were also several times rarer and more expensive than ordinary artifacts. So, even though this shield was only Dao Source Grade low rank, its true value wasn't any less than a Dao Source Grade high rank artifact, and in fact it might even be more valuable than the latter. This small shield was obviously a defensive artifact, and if one could refine it in their body, they would be able to use it to protect their knowledge sea and soul from foreign threats. Yang Kai actually didn't have any soul-type artifacts. Back when he was still quite weak, he did have an offensive soul-type short sword artifact, but he had long since stopped using it as his strength improved. He had also learned the Blossoming Lotus secret technique, and its offensive prowess far exceeded that of the majority of soul-type artifacts, which was why he had never considered finding such an artifact before. Gao Xueting's gift indeed compensated for one of his shortcomings, with this artifact protecting his knowledge sea, and with Yang Kai's already strong soul, it would be quite difficult for someone to injure him with a divine sense attack. There was a saying that one shouldn't refuse gifts from an elder, so although Yang Kai wasn't a disciple of Azure Sun Temple, Gao Xueting was still an Emperor Realm Master and technically his elder. That was why Yang Kai had simply thanked her and accepted the gift without even thinking about it when she gave him this artifact. After looking it over, he figured it wouldn't take too long to refine. Since he had nothing to do apart from waiting for news on the tribulation fruit, Yang Kai decided to start refining it right away. Yang Kai no longer hesitated, sat down cross-legged, and sent his spiritual energy towards the purple sun profound light shield. More than 10 days passed by slowly. Over these 10+ days, Yang Kai remained sitting in his room without moving, working diligently to refine the purple sun profound light shield. Thanks to his persistence during this time, he had completed about a third of the refinement process and was now barely able to activate some of this artifact's power. However, completely refining it would require more accumulation over time. As expected of a Dao source-grade low-rank soul-type artifact, this purple sun profound light shield seemed to possess impressively strong abilities. Even in its current state of refinement, it was able to form a purple light barrier that covered the outside of Yang Kai's knowledge sea, adding a powerful layer of protection. Anyone who wanted to harm Yang Kai's knowledge sea would first have to break through this purple shield. Since Yang Kai hadn't finished refining it yet, he didn't know if it had other abilities. Still, just this alone was more than enough for him to look forward to. On this day, Yang Kai suddenly sensed something, so he hurriedly opened his eyes and looked outside. Right when he opened his eyes, someone spoke up in a loud voice, "Brother Yang, I'm here to see you." Upon hearing this voice, Yang Kai knew that the one who came to see him was Xianxia. Right when Xianxia spoke, he immediately pushed the door open and entered. Someone else spoke up right after, "Senior brother, he hasn't invited you in yet. What if you disturbed his cultivation by doing this?" This person was Xiao Bai. Perhaps junior brother Yang was studying some secret technique. "Senior brother, don't be so reckless." Murong Xiao Zhao's voice also chimed in, conveying some worry with it. Upon hearing this, Xiaoshang couldn't help showing an embarrassed look, like he was caught between a rock and a hard place, muttering in a low voice, "What should I do then?" I already shouted. "It's all right, please enter." Yang Kai responded. Xiaoshang's expression immediately eased up as he laughed loudly while entering. "Pardon the intrusion," Xiao Bai muttered as he walked in as well. Soon, several people appeared in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai was surprised that, in addition to Xiaoshang, Xiao Bai, and Murong Xiao, Chun Muji was actually present as well. Chun Muji and Yang Kai didn't know each other and had basically only greeted each other a few times, never sharing a real conversation. Xiaoshang warmly introduced the two of them to each other. The guest room here was rather simple, so Yang Kai simply invited them in and asked them to make themselves comfortable. Next, turning to Xiaoshang, he asked, "Do you have something to tell me since you all came here together?" Xiaoshang nodded lightly and smiled mysteriously as he said, "The temple master is summoning us." "Me as well." Yang Kai raised his brow. The ones present were all elites of Azure Sun Temple, so it was only normal that they would be summoned. However, Xiaoshang seemed to mean that Yang Kai had been summoned as well, confusing him greatly. "Of course." Xiaoshang nodded with a serious expression as he explained, "Temple Master especially had us come here to bring Brother Yang to see him. Do you know what this is about?" Yang Kai inquired. "Something good." Xiaoshang smiled and chuckled. Xiao Bai added from the side, "Last time we left, didn't the Temple Master mention an additional reward? I believe it's about that." "A reward?" Yang Kai's expression seemed incredibly strange. "But I already made a request of Temple Master One. What else would he reward me with?" Xianxia smiled and continued, "How could that small request possibly make up for your contribution of 6 extra star seals? Temple Master has always been the type to give fair rewards and punishments. Brother Yang, since you've made such a major contribution to the temple this time, it won't be balanced out by a small request." "Indeed." Xiaobai also nodded. "You've noticed already that Temple Master only summoned us this time, yes? We were the only ones who obtained extra star seals. I, Xiao, and Junior Brother Chun were all able to get rewards just by giving a single extra star seal, not to mention you who brought back 6 all at once. Let's stop chatting and leave already. I'm really eager to know just what the Temple Master will reward me with," Xiaxia said with an impatient expression. "In that case, I'll be troubling you all to lead the way," Yang Kai said politely. The 5 of them then each used their own movement skills to fly towards Azure Sun Temple's main peak. It didn't take long for them to arrive at Myriad Saints Peak, where they landed and walked into the main temple. However, Yang Kai's expression suddenly changed just before he crossed the threshold. At that moment, he sensed a mystical power engulf him, and before he could react, he felt a weightless sensation overcome him. When the others passed the temple's threshold, they noticed that Yang Kai had suddenly vanished. "Where's Brother Yang?" Xiaxiang's expression changed greatly as he exclaimed in astonishment. Xiao Bai Yi, Murong Xiao, and Chun Muji also wore serious and shocked expressions. "Don't worry," the temple master called him for a private discussion. Someone suddenly spoke from in front of the group. Turning around, they discovered it was Gao Shueting who spoke. At this moment, Elder Gao seemed like a silently standing, blooming white lotus flower that was clear yet distant. The group of juniors all exchanged a glance, not knowing why when Zishan had taken Yang Kai away by himself, but they also didn't worry about it further and instead spoke in unison, "Greetings, Elder Gao." At the same time, Yang Kai mysteriously appeared in a secluded room on Myriad Saints Peak. Yang Kai regained control over his own body and immediately took a defensive posture as he looked around him. However, he quickly saw when Zishan sitting lazily nearby, smiling while looking at him. "Ah, greetings, Temple Master 1. Yang Kai wore a serious expression and cupped his fists. When Zishan nodded and replied, "No need for pleasantries," he then stood up and slowly walked over to the table, picked up a wine bottle, then poured himself a glass. The room instantly filled with a fragrant aroma. He took a small sip and made an expression as if he really enjoyed it. The corner of Yang Kai's mouth twitched slightly when he saw Wen Zishan acting like this, but he simply remained silent and waited instead of interrupting. After a long while, it seemed as if Wen Zishan finally regained his senses from that pleasant sensation of his drink, as he spoke up with an expression of satisfaction. "You should know why I called you here, yes?" Yang Kai remained silent for a moment before he nodded. "I heard some guesses from Brother Xia." "Ha ha," Wen Zishan chuckled. "You're such a cautious little brat. Indeed, I called you over to give you a reward. Although you made a request of this king some days ago, that request isn't enough to balance the contribution you made to the temple. However, you're also not a disciple of my temple, making you technically an outsider, so what reward to offer you took this king quite some time to think of." "Junior doesn't want much." Yang Kai smiled slightly. When Zishan replied, "Then what reward would you like? I might as well ask you. If it is possible, this king will satisfy your request." He handed the right to choose over to Yang Kai. This sounded really generous, but Yang Kai knew quite well what was actually happening. It was because he was merely a first-order Dao Source Realm cultivator, while Wen Zishan was third-order Emperor Realm as well as a sect master. Thus, anything that seemed precious and rare to Yang Kai would likely be quite ordinary in Wen Zishan's eyes. It was highly likely that Wen Zishan would be able to easily give Yang Kai anything that he would dare to request. Yang Kai would never make the foolish mistake of letting this rare opportunity pass him by. He simply stated, "What reward can Temple Master Wen give this junior?" Hearing this, Wen Zishan wore an expression of praise as the two of them exchanged glances, understanding each other's motives. After a moment of silence, Wen Zishan spoke up, "When considering the number of star seals that you gave, this king can take responsibility and open the temple's treasury and allow you to choose any 3 items from within to keep. Yang Kai's eyes lit up instantly. When Zishan was talking about Azure Sun Temple's treasury, rather than his personal one. Azure Sun Temple was one of the top sects in the Southern Territory, so its treasury would be filled with countless rare items. If Yang Kai really was allowed to enter and take any 3 items he pleased, it was likely that his power level would improve by leaps and bounds. But just as he was feeling moved, when Zishan added more as if trying to incite him, there are countless artifacts within the vault, and there are even 2 Emperor artifacts. But as for what the Emperor artifacts are and where they're located, you must find them for yourself. I won't be telling you. Apart from those, there are also rare elixirs that are impossible to find in the outside world, secret arts and secret books that are never shown to outsiders, and so on. With your current cultivation, obtaining any one of these treasures will be a great opportunity for you. Additionally, there are also records left behind by many emperors of their cultivation experiences you could learn from. Yang Kai's breathing gradually became faster as he never expected that when Zishan would be so generous to him. No matter what, Yang Kai was still an outsider, yet when Zishan was actually willing to open up the sect's treasury to him. Just this alone was more than enough to make Yang Kai incredibly grateful. However, although the items when Zishan mentioned were indeed precious and hard to obtain, Yang Kai was still unable to immediately make up his mind. He didn't care about Emperor artifacts, and he was capable of refining his own spirit pills, so he didn't need those. As for secret arts and secret books, he could also ignore those since even if he took them, he wouldn't have that much time to cultivate them. Yang Kai was instead slightly tempted by the Emperor Realm Master's written cultivation experiences. Those books might help him save a lot of time by avoiding wrong paths in his cultivation. When Zishan was rather surprised to see the changes in Yang Kai's expression as he asked, "What's wrong? Are none of these of interest to you?" Yang Kai took a deep breath and replied, "Please forgive me, Temple Master One. I just don't know how to decide." When Zishan smiled and said, "This king understands. And if you don't like any of these things, how about this king personally teaches you a secret technique?" Yang Kai raised his head and glanced at him while quickly saying, "Temple Master One, can I ask what reward Brother Xia and the others obtained this time? Are they also able to enter your noble temple's treasury and choose 3 items as they like?" At this moment, when Zishan's smile seemed to become more meaningful as he pointed at Yang Kai and exclaimed, "Kid, you really understand well. It seems that Brother Xia and the others were able to receive a reward that was different from mine." Yang Kai understood. Their reward is indeed different, since they are disciples of the temple while you aren't, when Zishan directly admitted. He wasn't worried that Yang Kai would be displeased since it was an obvious fact that people would always favor their own more. However, when Zishan changed the topic and said, "You also have a chance to obtain the same reward as them, although it will depend on if you're willing or not." "I'm willing to hear the details." Yang Kai adopted a serious expression. Although he didn't know what reward Xiaxiang and the others were able to receive, since when Zishan openly admitted that the reward was different, this meant that Xiaxiang and the others were receiving a better reward. Since there was an opportunity, Yang Kai would naturally want to try for himself. Still, he was quite curious just what reward was actually better than choosing any 3 items from the sect's vault. This time, when Zishan didn't answer him immediately and instead asked, "Do you know why this king created Azure Sun Temple here?" Yang Kai thought to himself that the temple's founding was several hundred or even several thousand years ago. So how was he supposed to know? Although he thought this in his mind, he acted as if he really wanted to learn as he answered, "I do not know. Of course it is because there's something special here." When Zishan replied, a trace of nostalgia flashing across his eyes as he spoke, 800 years ago, this king happened to pass by Azure Sun Mountain Range and discovered an item with miraculous uses and mysterious abilities. At that time, this king was already a 3rd-order Emperor realm and wanted to obtain that item, but unfortunately, he didn't succeed. This king could only temporarily put down roots here, and as time passed, this place gradually started resembling a sect, so this king decided he might as well found Azure Sun Temple. Azure Sun Temple has a shorter inheritance compared to the other top-level sects in the Southern Territory, Yet why do we have the ability to compete with them on even ground? Yang Kai's brow rose as he guessed. Could it be due to that item? Wen Zishan immediately wore an appreciative expression as he nodded to Yang Kai. That's right. Although this king is a third-order emperor realm, and my power isn't any weaker than other sect masters or temple masters, a sect's strength or weakness isn't about just one person. A sect requires many reliable pillars to hold its form, and it was thanks to that item that Azure Sun Temple was able to develop to today's extent. May I ask just what that item is? Yang Kai also became quite curious as he listened, really wondering just what kind of item would be able to make a sect flourish to such a degree. When Zishan glanced at Yang Kai with a serious expression as he explained, "The Divine Ascension Mirror. It is a mystical object that has existed since the birth of the heavens and earth. Inside of it is a self-contained world, but one that is very different from the one we live in. As for how it is different, this king won't explain to you, since you'll naturally learn for yourself if you have the opportunity to enter it. Any cultivator who enters it to train will be able to greatly increase their strength though. Back in the day, this king explored the inside of this mirror but was still unable to figure out all its mysteries. For the past several hundred years, most of the elite disciples of the temple have entered this mirror, and all who managed to leave it alive became much stronger. Star Soul Palace has the 5-colored treasure pagoda, Orthodoxy Temple has the outer astral wind, and Heavenly Martial Holy Land has its martial intent temple. These are the foundations of their respective sects, and the reason why these sects have stood the test of time." When Zishan had a proud expression as he added, "Meanwhile, my Azure Sun Temple has the Divine Ascension Mirror. As long as the Divine Ascension Mirror isn't broken, my temple can continue passing on its inheritance and remain standing. Can Junior enter as well?" Yang Kai asked with fervor. When Zishan smiled, "Originally, this king would have found it impossible to allow an outsider like you to enter it. After all, the Divine Ascension Mirror is a secret of my temple that only those who have entered know about. Ordinary disciples have never even heard of it, so of course, the other sects naturally know nothing about it. However, this time you contributed a great deal to the temple, so it would be wrong for this king to refuse you entry. But even so, allowing you to enter would be breaking the sect rules." Upon hearing this, Yang Kai suddenly spoke up. "Temple Master 1, do you recall that you said if I won the fight against Shui, you would agree to one of my requests as long as it wasn't excessive?" When Zishan paused momentarily in surprise as he looked at Yang Kai and asked, "Why? Do you want to use that request here?" "Of course." Yang Kai nodded. "Plus, since I've contributed 6 star seals to the temple as a major achievement, there should be no problem now?" There are no problems." When Zishan thought for a moment, "You're already saying so much, but are you certain that you want to do this? You don't even know what the Divine Ascension Mirror can do for you." Yang Kai smiled and said, "Since Brother Xia and the others obtained this reward, that means it is the best reward possible, and since it's the best reward, why should I hesitate?" "Good." When Zishan declared in a serious voice, "Since that's the case, then this king shall permit you to enter. However, you must swear an oath that you will never expose the secret of the Divine Ascension Mirror to anyone else. Otherwise—" "Junior understands." Yang Kai nodded and immediately swore a solemn oath in front of Wen Zishan. Half a day later, Yang Kai left Wen Zishan's side and returned to Soaring Swallow Peak. For this half a day, Wen Zishan explained in detail to Yang Kai about the secrets of the Divine Ascension Mirror. The more that Yang Kai learned about the Divine Ascension Mirror, the more astonished he became that such a miraculous treasure had been born in this world, and how such a mysterious world could exist. When Zishan was correct, anyone who was able to enter the Divine Ascension Mirror and come out alive would see a great increase in their strength. This improvement was more than just an increase in raw power though, and was rather an improvement to a person's foundation, a genuine boon to any cultivator. Now, Yang Kai finally understood why Gao Xueting had suddenly visited him a few days ago and given him the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield before she left. She must have already known about this beforehand, or she must have planned ahead, which was why she specifically gave him a soul-type defensive artifact. Also, Yang Kai could have some extra layer of safety after entering the Divine Ascension Mirror. After realizing this, Yang Kai froze for a moment as he realized something and smiled wryly, muttering in a low voice, "Aged ginger really is spicier than young ginger." He said this because he had realized that when Zishan and the others had probably already discussed and agreed upon him entering the Divine Ascension Mirror more than 10 days ago. However, Temple Master Wen had intentionally made things difficult for him today and kept hinting many times that Xianxia and the others had received a different reward from Yang Kai, all in order to lure Yang Kai into using up the promise he had previously given him. In other words, even if Yang Kai didn't use up Wen Zishan's promise, that he could make a request that wasn't excessive, he likely would have been able to enter the Divine Ascension Mirror. However, there was no use in crying over spilt milk. Yang Kai felt that he should actually thank Wen Zishan instead. Temple Master Wen had been willing to reveal such a major secret of Azure Sun Temple to an outsider like Yang Kai, and even allowed him to enter the Divine Ascension Mirror. So what did it matter if he used up that promise in the process? Yang Kai was going to enter that Divine Ascension Mirror tomorrow, so he no longer rushed to refine the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield when he returned to Soaring Swallow Peak. Half a day's refinement wouldn't amount to anything, no matter how hard he tried. So Yang Kai didn't make a futile effort. Instead, he simply sat cross-legged in silence and adjusted his condition to its best. The next day in the morning, Yang Kai opened his eyes with a flash. It was evident that he had rested well. He then immediately headed for a certain place deep in the Azure Sun mountain range. Yang Kai landed at the foot of a tall peak approximately 1 hour later. 4 figures were already standing there on the empty ground. Yang Kai looked around and saw that these 4 were Xiaoshang, Xiao Baiyi, Murong Xiaoxiao, and Chen Muji. Ha! I knew that Brother Yang would definitely come as well. Xiaoshang smiled widely and glanced over at Yang Kai when he saw him. Xiao Baiyi instead had an expression of astonishment. He had thought that the Divine Ascension Mirror was a top secret for the sect, and it should have been impossible for an outsider like Yang Kai to enter no matter how great his contributions were. He hadn't thought that Temple Master One would be so generous. Junior Brother Yang. Murong Xiaoxiao flashed a smile at Yang Kai and nodded in greeting. Brother Yang. Chun Muji also cupped his fists. Although he still didn't know Yang Kai very well, they had at least spoken a few words to each other by now, and all of them were going to enter the Divine Ascension Mirror together and would be relying on each other's help, so there was no harm in trying to have a better relationship with each other. Yang Kai also cupped his fists in response and greeted everyone while chatting a little. Only after time did he change the topic and ask, "Is it only us entering this time? Is there no elder leading us?" Xiaoshang smiled and answered, "Of course there is an elder. The Divine Ascension Mirror's interior is said to be quite dangerous, so the temple naturally wouldn't feel confident about just letting us Dao Source Realm Juniors enter by ourselves. They should be sending an Emperor Realm Elder to assist us. We just don't know who it will be," Chen Muji said with a smile. Xiaosheng's face immediately darkened as he muttered, "It absolutely must not be Elder Gao." Last time, when traveling to the Four Seasons realm, Gao Shueting had tossed him off the ship both on the way there and on the way back, so he was rather afraid of Gao Shueting. After Xiaoshang said this, he then turned around with suspicion while looking at Murong Xiaoxiao as he asked in confusion, "Xiaoxiao, did you not rest well last night? Why are your eyes constantly twitching?" "No," Murong Xiaoxiao answered in a tiny voice with an anxious expression. "Humph." Xiao Bai coldly snorted and looked elsewhere. Meanwhile, Chun Muji and Yang Kai were respectively gazing at the sky and looking down at the ground. Xiaoshang suddenly seemed to realize something as he shivered involuntarily. He felt a chill from his back, as if the Reaper of Death was standing behind him. "Ha ha!" He suddenly chuckled dryly. "What did I say just now?" Before he finished speaking, he felt tremendous pain on his head as someone viciously hit him. He then completely collapsed on the ground, all splayed out, unmoving. "All of you, follow this queen," Gao Shueting said in a light tone as she turned and flew upwards. "Yes." Everyone responded in agreement as they followed closely after Gao Shueting. As Murong Xiaoxiao left, she glanced towards Xiaoshang with an expression filled with sympathy. However, she didn't have the courage to pull him up, so she could only offer silent prayers for her senior brother in her heart. Along the way, Gao Xueting didn't say a single word, which gave the disciples an immense amount of pressure. For some unknown reason, when they were with Gao Xueting, the disciples all couldn't help but become silent and stop smiling, as if they were all awed by her icy aura. It didn't take long for the group to reach the peak. On this peak was a cliff that faced an abyss. The cliff was completely flat and smooth. Gao Xueting stopped in midair in front of the cliff. Yang Kai and the others all stood about 10 meters away from Gao Xueting as they glanced at this place with curiosity. It was normal that Yang Kai would be curious since he wasn't a disciple of Azure Sun Temple. He was unfamiliar with everything here. However, it was different for Xiao Baiyi and the others. They had lived in Azure Sun Temple for many years while studying under the masters and learning here. They had also passed by this location many times, but none of them had ever paid any attention to this place, all of them thinking it was just an ordinary mountain. None of them had suspected that such a big secret was concealed here. After we enter, don't look at what you shouldn't, and don't say anything you shouldn't, Gao Xueting warned before turning to a certain someone and saying pointedly, "Especially you." As she said this final sentence, her strict gaze focused right on Xiaxia, who was attempting to hide behind Murong Xiaoxiao. It was unknown when he had caught up. This disciple will become mute right now. When Xiaxia heard this, he immediately drew a line across his mouth, as if he was sewing his mouth shut with an invisible thread. Only then did Gao Xueting turn around and face the flat cliff as she called out, "Grandma Yu, are you present?" Xueting is here at the command of the sect master to bring several disciples into the divine ascension mirror. "Grandma Yu, please open the barrier." Her tone was incredibly polite. She wasn't ever this polite when facing Wen Zishan and Qiu Ran. It was fine with Wen Zishan, as it seemed that Wen Zishan had personally raised Gao Xueting, so the two of them had a really close relationship. Wen Zishan also often did things that made Gao Xueting angry, so of course, Gao Xueting wouldn't respect him. However, Qiu Ran was the vice-temple master of Azure Sun Temple, and also a second-order emperor, yet he had never received such polite treatment from Gao Xueting before. Not only that, Yang Kai faintly sensed that apart from politeness, Gao Xueting's attitude also portrayed some nervousness and tension. On top of that, the way she referred to herself made her sound like a junior, so Yang Kai immediately extrapolated that this Grandma Yu who guarded this restricted area must be someone on the level of a supreme elder, and one that had an extremely bad temper. Yang Kai was slightly surprised by his own inference, because he hadn't expected that there would be someone like this within Azure Sun Temple. Gao Xueting kept waiting after she had called out. At least half an hour passed before a flash of light suddenly appeared on the cliff in front. Right after that, a cave suddenly appeared on the cliff which had been completely smooth before. Upon seeing this, Gao Xueting called to everyone in a low voice, "Follow me." Only then did she fly towards the cave with everyone else following close behind. After they entered the cave, everyone felt a cold aura envelop them. Even though everyone present was at the Dao source realm at the minimum, they still couldn't help shivering slightly. The cave was quiet and had weak lighting. Gao Xueting led in the front while everyone followed closely while watching their footing. Nobody spoke. In fact, they all suppressed their breathing as much as they possibly could. The only sound came from slight heartbeats that added to the eerie atmosphere. The cave path continued to twist and wind in confusing ways as Gao Xueting led everyone deeper into the mountain. They walked for quite a long time before a bright light suddenly appeared in front of them. Moments later, they arrived in a large and spacious stone cavern. When looking around, this stone cavern's inside was clean and simple, with nothing at all in terms of decoration. In the center of the cavern was something that resembled a mirror, which kept flashing with light and seemed to be the size of a table. Everyone's expression flickered involuntarily as they immediately understood that this was the legendary Divine Ascension mirror, all of them looking over, seemingly wanting to get a better view. However, when they focused on the mirror, they found that the Divine Ascension mirror was so mystical that the originally flat surface suddenly transformed into a huge whirlpool that emitted an unimaginable suction force. Right after that, everyone's knowledge sea began to roil as their souls became unsettled, as if they were about to be sucked away. Everyone panicked and hurriedly averted their gazes. none of them daring to stare at this abnormal treasure again as they all broke out into cold sweats. Youngsters always need to suffer some before learning just how insignificant they are. Humph! A grating and ear-piercing voice suddenly spoke up and echoed in the spacious stone cavern. This voice felt as if 100 claws were scratching at the heart and made one feel incredibly uncomfortable. If one really had to describe it, the voice resembled the sound of two pieces of metal scraping together with great force. Xianxia and the others all felt like their heads were going numb when they heard it. As the voice spoke, a figure suddenly mysteriously appeared in front of everyone. Nobody noticed just when she had appeared, and even Gao Shueting's reflexively reacted. But in the next moment, she managed to compose herself again. "Greetings, Grandma Yu." Gao Shueting wore a serious expression as she cupped her fists towards the newly appeared figure. Xianxia and the others also hurriedly turned towards this newcomer and quickly discovered that Grandma Yu was surprisingly short, only reaching about the height of Xianxia's chest, and had a crooked back while she supported herself with a staff. She appeared to be really weak and doddering. Meanwhile, the word ugly wouldn't do Grandma Yu's face any justice. Her entire face was filled with pits and blemishes. The invasion of time had left countless wrinkles upon her face, and there were even many age spots on her face, making it seem like she didn't have long left to live. Only her green eyes shone with energy. Everyone felt like their hair stood on end when they met her eyes. The first word that everyone thought of was the word vicious to describe such eyes and appearance. Murong Xiaoxiao's pretty face was already paling slightly as she didn't have as much courage as the others. But even the men present wore expressions of discomfort. However, none of them dared be impolite since Grandma Yu was right in front of them, all of them cupping their fists. "Greetings, Senior." Grandma Yu nodded lightly without indicating much else, simply glancing around while using an almost suffocating divine sense to scan their bodies. Xianxia was truly shocked as he stared at this old lady in front of him. This was because he discovered that her divine sense was actually inconceivably strong. Even Aunt Feng, whom he met before, couldn't compare to Grandma Yu. Aunt Feng was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, someone on par with Wen Zishan. However, this Grandma Yu's aura was nowhere near the third-order Emperor realm. According to Xianxia's experience, he estimated that she was just a first-order emperor. In other words, even though this old lady was only at the first-order emperor realm, her divine sense was as powerful as a third-order emperor. It was unknown whether this was due to her own natural talent, or if it was related to how she constantly guarded the divine Ascension mirror. Xianxia secretly felt that the latter possibility was more likely, since according to Wen Zishan, the greatest use of the divine Ascension mirror was to strengthen a cultivator's soul. Since Grandma Yu always stayed here in order to guard the divine Ascension mirror, she must have obtained tremendous benefits from this miraculous treasure as well. Oh! Grandma Yu actually focused her gaze on Xianxia after scanning everyone, as if she had noticed something, cackling strangely as she exclaimed, "An interesting little guy appeared." Gao Shueting glanced at Xianxia and furrowed her brow slightly, but didn't say anything in the end. As for Grandma Yu, she didn't say anything else about Xianxia and instead just stated in her piercing voice, "The others are just passable." Gao Shueting cupped her fists and said, "I'll be troubling Grandma to take them into the divine Ascension mirror." Humph, that little bastard Wen Zishan. He only knows how to order this old lady around. Grandma Yu suddenly shouted angrily after hearing this. Xianxia and the others were truly stunned as they stared in disbelief at the old lady in front of them. No matter what, Wen Zishan was still the temple master of Azure Sun Temple. Since this Grandma Yu had taken the job of guarding this restricted area, then she was obviously someone from the temple as well. A cultivator from the temple actually dared to be so rude and call the temple master a little bastard right in front of so many people. This seemed off no matter how everyone thought about it. However, after Grandma Yu finished cursing Wen Zishan, she turned her head and used her sharp gaze to stare at everyone as she viciously exclaimed, "What's wrong? That bastard trapped me here, yet I'm not even allowed to curse at him? Do you have any objections?" Everyone hurriedly shook their heads in unison, feeling that this sentence contained a lot of information. Meanwhile, Gao Shueting arched her brow and mentioned, "Grandma, You're here simply because of a bet between you and the temple master. So why? What do you know? Grandma Yu's temper was as bad as Yang Kai had expected. After she finished cursing Wen Zishan, she got angry at Gao Shueting as her expression became warped. Back then, you were nothing more than a little brat, so what would you know? That bastard Wen Zishan, if it wasn't for me not being able to beat him, I long would have ripped his corpse into 10,000 pieces already. She seemed to recall a really unpleasant memory, causing her to constantly curse as she kept banging her staff on the ground, causing the entire stone cavern to echo loudly. Yang Kai and the others stood where they were as their hearts trembled in fear, worried this old lady would go crazy and attack them. With her powerful divine sense that was on par if not stronger than a third-order emperor's, if she did attack without warning, Gao Shueting might not be able to protect them. Luckily, even though Grandma Yu was incredibly furious, she hadn't reached the point of losing logic and reason, so she suddenly stopped speaking after she cursed for a while, stood in place and panted loudly, as if she had become tired. Gao Shueting also wore a difficult expression as she forced herself to be patient, not daring to interrupt Grandma Yu's ranting. Only once the latter seemed to finish cursing did Gao Shueting speak again. Grandma, we should first send them in. I know. Grandma Yu responded impatiently as she turned to look at Gao Shueting. Are you also entering this time? Gao Shueting answered, I am. And then each of you go find a stone room. Grandma Yu then suddenly pointed to the front with her staff. Yang Kai and the others looked where she was pointing, and only then noticed that all around the mystical divine ascension mirror were man-made stone rooms, each one with a door and a token hanging upon it. At a rough count, there were approximately 10 or so stone rooms that enveloped the divine ascension mirror in a semicircular formation. Gao Shueting spoke up to explain. I think that you should all know how to enter the divine ascension mirror already. It's a place where only one soul avatar can enter, so our physical bodies will be unable to move later. Temple Master personally created these stone rooms, so while your soul avatars are exploring the divine ascension mirror, your safety will be ensured as long as the barriers on these stone rooms are activated. Without the barrier token, or the Temple Master personally acting, no one can destroy those stone rooms or damage your physical bodies. Everyone nodded in understanding after hearing this. All this to guard against me. Grandma Yu coldly snorted in dissatisfaction and chuckled wickedly. Since he can't relax with me here, why didn't he just kill me back then? Why did he instead force me to guard this restricted area? She kept talking to herself, but everyone ignored her. However, Yang Kai and the others knew that she was telling the truth. When Zishan had specially created these stone rooms in order to protect the disciples whose soul avatars had entered the divine ascension mirror against Grandma Yu. Grandma Yu was someone who seemed very dangerous. After all, no one could tell just what she might do. What if she damaged their physical bodies while everyone was in the divine ascension mirror? It was likely that everyone would then be stuck in the divine ascension mirror for all eternity. As Grandma Yu spoke, everyone found a stone room for themselves, took the token hanging on the door, and entered. Gao Shueting didn't rush to find a room for herself, however, and instead just stood where she was and explained to everyone about how to use the token. Everyone soon learned the method to use their token and entered their own stone room, closing the door behind them and opening all the appropriate barriers. After everyone finished, Gao Shueting finally chose an empty stone room and entered. Before she closed the door, she added, "We'll be troubling you, Grandma. No need for you to waste your breath," was Grandma Yu's response. Gao Shueting didn't say anything else as she also activated the barrier around her room and waited quietly. A moment later, Grandma Yu supported herself on her staff as she went over to the divine ascension mirror. Suddenly, she tossed her staff aside and opened up her arms. At the same time, a torrential amount of spiritual energy poured out of her forehead and was injected into the divine ascension mirror. She kept muttering something that sounded like an incantation, but upon listening more carefully, it didn't sound like anything sensible at all. As she made her movements, the divine ascension mirror's original faint flashes suddenly exploded with brilliant divine light. Simultaneously, Yang Kai and the others who were sitting cross-legged in the stone rooms all became covered in the brilliant light. All of them felt something really discomforting in the light, as if their souls were about to be sucked out of their bodies by it, a somewhat panic-inducing sensation. However, none of them tried to resist because this was an expected phenomenon. Every cultivator who entered the Divine Ascension Mirror would experience the same thing. Wang! The Divine Ascension Mirror suddenly began flashing rapidly as a vortex appeared from it, covering everything in the surrounding cave. Sand and stones were kicked up and smashed into the stone rooms and cavern walls, causing many loud bangs. Shio, shio, shio. 6 beams of light flew forth from 6 different stone rooms in the next instant and entered the Divine Ascension Mirror before vanishing. At the same time, Yang Kai and the others' figures flashed like lightning past the surface of the Divine Ascension Mirror. And Grandma Yu's eyes suddenly lit up as she was channeling her spiritual energy. It seemed like she noticed something as she stared at the Divine Ascension Mirror and soon exclaimed, "Impossible! That's impossible. One of those brats actually possesses such a precious treasure? Did I see incorrectly?" She then clasped her hands and viciously slapped out. The flashing Divine Ascension Mirror immediately stabilized itself and resumed its original appearance. However, Grandma Yu's face was quite pale and her forehead was dripping with sweat. Her originally short body seemed even shorter now, as if this activation had used up a tremendous amount of her energy. Damn it! Damn it all! When Zishan, you left me alive only because activating the Divine Ascension Mirror requires the divine sense of a third-order emperor. Don't think that I don't know about your evil intentions. This old lady will make you pay the price sooner or later. After saying this, she hurriedly sat down cross-legged and shakily took out some spirit pills from her space ring and popped them into her mouth as if they were candy. No matter if I saw wrongly or not, I must go in and check for myself. If that really is the item I saw, when Zishan, this is your end. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. She began to laugh out loud in a crazed manner after speaking like a madman to herself. At the same moment, when Zishan was looking into the distance from Myriad Saints' Peak, Chun Qian was by his side. Once the Third-Order Emperor Realm spiritual energy fluctuations died down, Chun Qian muttered, "It seems that Sister Gao and the others have entered now." And when Zishan nodded, everything was successful. Temple Master. Chun Qian suddenly turned to look at Wen Zishan. This subordinate doesn't understand something. Oh? There's even something that little Qian doesn't know? I thought that you were so crafty despite your size, and that you knew everything. Wen Zishan commented with a wide smile. Chun Qian just glared at him. Temple Master, you personally raised Sister Gao, so it's fine for you to talk to her with such a tone. But I'm different. If you keep acting so flippantly and dim, I'm worried that you really will be single for the rest of your life. When Zishan immediately broke out into a cold sweat with an awkward expression. Ahem. Let's set this aside. What did you want to ask just now? Back then, why didn't you kill Grandma Yu? Chun Qian quickly said with a serious expression. When Zishan's expression also became serious as he fell into silence for a moment before answering. It's not that I didn't want to, but rather that I couldn't kill her. Chun Qian replied with confusion. This subordinate does not understand. When Zishan answered, back when I first came to Azure Sun Mountain Range, I decided to stay here precisely because I discovered the Divine Ascension Mirror. At that time, that old thing was already guarding the Divine Ascension Mirror, and it seemed as if she had been doing so for more than 2,000 years. Of course, my desire was stimulated upon seeing that treasure for the first time, and I was quite eager to study it. But you already know about that old thing's temper. She wouldn't agree no matter what. So in the end, this king was forced into a fight with her. The end result was that you won and Grandma you lost. And when Zishan nodded, although our divine senses were at about the same level, she only had first-order emperor, so this king was stronger overall. At that time, I discovered that old thing wasn't anything good, with a violent temperament and a cruel heart. I never would have shown her mercy if I didn't have to. However, since she had been together with the Divine Ascension Mirror for so long, it seemed as if she gained some understanding of its mysteries, and although she was unable to use it against her enemies, she could still use special methods to seal and ruin it. If she was really forced to the brink, she could simply destroy that treasure, and then no one would ever be able to use it. Chen Qian understood much more after she heard this. So, Temple Master had such worries? Indeed, when Zishan replied, "Thus, I made an agreement with her that this king wouldn't kill her, nor would I take the divine Ascension mirror away from her. However, she would need to cooperate whenever I needed to use the divine Ascension mirror." Chen Qian now had an expression of understanding. No wonder, back when I went to train in the divine Ascension mirror, Grandma Yu's expression was filled with unwillingness. Yet she still activated the mirror for me. So there was such a reason. Not only you, when Zishan chuckled. That old thing always behaves like this every time that she has to activate the divine Ascension mirror. She's always treated the divine Ascension mirror as her personal belonging, so she can't stand others touching it. When Zishan then coldly snorted. After all these years, although she has cooperated on the surface, she's probably secretly used so many schemes to kill countless elites of my temple. Chen Qian's pretty face changed upon hearing this as she stared at Wen Zishan in astonishment. Temple Master, you mean? When Zishan kept chuckling coldly. She thinks that she did it without anyone knowing, but this king actually knew all along. However, she didn't go too overboard, so this king can't be bothered to expose her. But the dead disciples. Chen Qian had a pained expression. When Zishan sighed deeply, this also counts as a type of trial. If one passes, they will naturally become stronger, and if they fail, they die. Everyone's fate is different. That's all. Chen Qian was now afraid after the fact as she patted her chest. Luckily, I managed to pass back them. She paused for a moment and then asked, Temple Master, why were you willing to let an outsider into the divine Ascension mirror? That is the temple's greatest secret. Even most disciples of the temple don't know about it. There's no particular reason. I just wanted to test his mettle. When Zishan smiled slightly, Chen Qian responded, Is it because of Bustling World Great Emperor? That boy brought the Bustling World Great Emperor's token with him, and I heard that the Bustling World Great Emperor raised you, Temple Master. Nothing could be further from the truth. When Zishan suddenly glared at Chen Qian and acted panicky. This king grew up as an ordinary person and has not the slightest connection to that old Bustling World fellow. Oh? You trying to hide it makes it more obvious. Chen Qian covered her mouth and smiled. Lies and slander. The more you deny it, the more certain it sounds. Little Qian Qian? When Zishan suddenly took a soft tone and called her name in a deeply romantic manner, Chen Qian's pretty face suddenly changed as she hurriedly said, Temple Master, this subordinate just remembered that I have something else to do. I'll be leaving now. She instantly flashed away, as if she was trying to escape from Wen Zishan's sight. Her past experiences told her that whenever Wen Zishan changed the topic and used such a tone with her, it would be best for her to escape immediately. Otherwise, she would definitely be tortured until she wanted to die. Humph. She's too naive. Daring to challenge this old master? Nothing but overconfidence. Wahahaha. When Zishan proudly revealed an attitude of an undefeatable champion, laughed loudly in an aloof manner, 6 vague figures appeared one after another in a strange space. Gradually, these figures congealed, the entire process quite wondrous. As the 6 figures solidified, they all groaned in pain, as if they were all experiencing great discomfort. However, everyone soon recovered. They looked all around and at each other. This is the world of the divine Ascension mirror? Xianxia exclaimed with astonishment. My body feels somewhat different. Morong Xiao furrowed her brow slightly. This should be because we are in the form of our soul avatars. Xiao Bai added. This is so hard to get used to. Chun Muji also commented. Yang Kai didn't say anything and just gently clenched his fist, experiencing for himself how different his body was from usual. If it was only physical appearance, everyone still appeared the same as before, right down to their clothes. However, if one looked closer, they would discover that everyone here had no physical body. In other words, everyone here consisted of pure spiritual energy. Although their forms appeared to be corporeal, they were actually not. It's just as I told you before. Gao Shueting got accustomed quite quickly, most likely because she had come here before, or perhaps because her realm was that much higher. Only our soul avatars have entered the divine ascension mirror, while our physical bodies are still in the stone rooms back in the stone cave. Everything in the divine ascension mirror's world is made of spiritual energy, which is why this place is highly effective at increasing the strength of our souls. If a cultivator has a powerful soul, their ability to comprehend secret arts and cultivate secret techniques will greatly increase as well. There are also countless other benefits. The soul is the most important foundation for a cultivator, apart from their physical body. That is why this is a rare opportunity for all of you. If you can strengthen your souls to a certain level here, it will also become easier for you all to rise to the Emperor realm in the future. Disciple understands. Xiao Bai and the others cupped their fists as they responded. The spiritual energy in the divine ascension mirror world is different from the world energy outside. When we cultivate outside, the world energy we absorb is transformed into qi to increase our cultivation. However, if you cultivate here, the spiritual energy you absorb will instead strengthen your soul. I think that you all should have noticed this already, Gao Shueting explained. Everyone nodded slightly. Yang Kai had indeed sensed that the energy in this strange world was quite different from energy in the outside world. He was absorbing the energy all around him, which strengthened his soul avatar and made his soul more durable and powerful. If you want to strengthen your soul here, apart from cultivating normally, you can also strengthen yourself by slaying the living beings here. There are other living beings here? Xiao Baiyi's expression changed slightly. Gao Shueting glanced at him. This is a complete world. Why wouldn't there be other living beings here? Xiao Baiyi was instantly rendered speechless. Gao Shueting continued. According to the Temple Master, the Divine Ascension Mirror is a mystical treasure that was born alongside the heavens and earth. The mirror's interior is its own independent world that, while even smaller than the Southern Territory, has given birth to its own unique life forms. There are people and monster beasts here, so this world has everything that the star boundary does. However, every living creature here is condensed from pure spiritual energy. Of course, none of these creatures realize this and believe that this is how the world should be. They have never experienced having physical bodies before. Also, I must remind you to avoid having any contact with the natives here. There are many powerful existences in the Divine Ascension Mirror you can't afford to antagonize. However, if you're capable of killing living beings that have evil intentions towards you, you'll be able to absorb their energy. The energy here is extremely pure, and most of it can be absorbed by our soul avatars to strengthen our souls directly. Everyone's eyes lit up upon hearing this. You might not understand too well just from my explanation. In that case, we can try it out right now so that you can understand. Gao Shueting closed her beautiful eyes as she spoke before releasing her powerful First-Order Emperor Realm Divine Sense. A moment later, she opened her eyes and declared, "Everyone, come with me." As she spoke, she began moving at a speed that everyone could follow after. This was a plain with long grass and many birds flying overhead, a scenery as beautiful and refreshing as a spring day. Even though there was no sun in the sky, the light in this world was quite plentiful. It was just unknown how this light was generated. Everyone followed Gao Shueting for more than a dozen kilometers before something resembling a monster beast suddenly appeared before them. Everyone looked over to see that the monster beast was a type that they had never seen before. It seemed like an ordinary wild animal, but its body was as gigantic as a building and its two curved tusks gave it a vicious appearance. The Tao Source Realm cultivators present instantly sent out their divine senses to scan this beast and soon discovered that it was at the peak of the 10th order. In other words, it was a monster beast which was equivalent to a peak origin king. None of them would have any trouble dealing with such a monster beast, so it was perfect for experimenting on to clarify Gao Shueting's earlier explanation. It seemed that Gao Shueting had chosen this beast intentionally. As everyone scanned with their divine sense, the monster beast, which appeared like a wild pig, also noticed them and instantly turned around to glare at them with its scarlet eyes. The pig then immediately used its 4 hooves to propel its gigantic body so swiftly that a wild gust was whipped up. Filled with killing intent, the beast charged at the group. Xiaoshang, I'll leave this scarlet-eyed evil pig to you, Gao Shueting announced in a calm tone. Then, this disciple shall go. Xiaoshang also adopted a serious expression upon hearing this, kicking off the ground and charging towards the scarlet-eyed evil pig. He understood that Gao Shueting wanted him to have a fight against this monster beast so that she could explain in more detail, so he didn't refuse. The human and beast instantly drew within 100 meters of each other. However, Xiaoshang suddenly stopped and lowered his waist slightly as he stood where he was in a solid stance. With one hand in front of his chest, he palmed forward and shouted, "Chaos Origin Palm!" Xiaoshang didn't know if the monster beasts in this world had the same combat strength as those in the outside world, which was why he used a secret technique right from the start. He didn't underestimate the scarlet-eyed evil pig one bit just because it was only peak 10th order. Because we entered this world with only our soul avatars. A majority of the secret techniques and secret arts that we usually cultivate have no effect here. Gao Shueting's words suddenly rang in everyone's ears. Everyone nodded lightly in understanding. Meanwhile, Xiaoshang's expression changed slightly because when he used his secret technique, nothing happened at all apart from him making a pose for nothing. When he heard Gao Shueting's words, he instantly realized that he had made a major mistake. In just the blink of an eye, the scarlet-eyed evil pig had closed to within 10 meters of Xiaoshang. Still, Xiaoshang didn't panic from the danger, and instead stretched out his hand to summon his artifact while shouting, "Don't be so arrogant. You beast. Die!" Gao Shueting once again spoke up at this moment. Artifacts are also unusable because normal artifacts require source qi and a physical body to utilize. Right as she finished saying this, Xiaoshang shouted, "Oh crap!" As he shouted, he instantly started running towards Gao Shueting while shouting in a panic, "Elder Gao, save me!" Gao Shueting glanced at him coldly and chuckled in a cold tone. "You're going too far with your acting. Although this queen knows that you're doing this because you want the others to better understand the wonders of this world. Are you trying to insult your own intelligence or your junior brother's and junior sister's intelligence? Hurry and kill it already, as you command." When Xiaoshang heard this, he immediately turned around, waving his hand as he summoned a long sword artifact into it. This artifact emanated a strong spiritual energy fluctuation and was clearly a soul-type artifact. Xiaoshang poured his spiritual energy into the artifact before slicing at the scarlet-eyed evil pig. He didn't use any extravagant technique or assume some elegant posture. He simply used his strength for a simple and direct hit. His sword flashed as a howl of pain arose. Energy furiously shot in all directions. The scarlet-eyed evil pig was directly sliced in half by the sword. Due to the momentum, the pig's gigantic body still charged forward for a short distance before it suddenly collapsed on the ground. Xiaoshang put away his sword and stood straight with an icy and cool expression upon his face. There was no blood, nor was there any smell or gore. The scarlet-eyed evil pig simply laid there quietly on the ground as its body gradually vanished in front of everyone's eyes. It seemed that it was transforming into energy that was vanishing into this land. Meanwhile, at the location where half of its corpse had already vanished was a slightly yellow ball of light that was about the size of a pea. Everyone couldn't help but stare with astonishment. When they scanned with their divine senses, Yang Kai and the others' expressions all couldn't help but flicker. That was because they discovered that this pea-sized yellow ball of light actually contained extremely pure spiritual energy which didn't seem to possess any taint at all. It was almost unimaginably pure. "This is a soul source," Gao Shueting explained. "In this world, every living being has its own soul source, and if they are killed, their soul source will remain, allowing us to easily absorb it and strengthen our souls." As she spoke, Xiaoshang was already dashing over as fast as he could towards the soul source as he then reached out for it. It seemed rather strange, but when he held the soul source, it actually melded into his hand and merged with his body. Xiaoshang immediately closed his eyes and showed an expression of great comfort. Sometime later, he opened his eyes again and shouted, "That was great!" Gao Shueting calmly continued. "According to my calculations, A soul source like that is probably worth 7 to 8 days of cultivation in the outside world for all of you. Yang Kai and the others' eyes all lit up upon hearing this. A peak of 10th order monster beast soul source dropped from its death was already so beneficial for them, so if it was an 11th order monster beast soul source, wouldn't that be equivalent to a month or two worth of dedicated cultivation? If one soul source helped so much, then 10 would be equal to a year's worth of effort, and 100 soul sources would be equal to 100 years' worth. 100 years' worth of hard work cultivating and increasing the strength of one's soul only required the soul sources of 111th order monster beasts. This seemed almost unimaginable. Don't get too excited. Gao Shueting poured some cold water on everyone at this moment. Although these living beings will leave behind extremely pure soul sources after death, and these soul sources are easy for us to absorb, they're still a type of foreign power rather than what you would gain from personal cultivation. This means that if you feel anything off in your own body, you must stop absorbing more, otherwise, your consciousness might become chaotic with unimaginable consequences. Everyone's expressions calmed down as they realized that this type of absorption wasn't limitless. It simply hadn't been obvious. Of course, if you can find a soul jade, things will be different. Gao Shueting spoke up once again. Soul jade. Yang Kai looked at her with an expression saying that he didn't understand. The others all had similar expressions. That's an object only produced in this world that is formed from the purest spiritual energy, and its appearance is similar to a type of jade. A soul jade can truly be absorbed without any worry. No problems will occur no matter how many of these you absorb, Gao Shueting explained. This queen has entered this world a total of 4 times, but even up until now, I've only obtained 1 mid-rank soul jade. Even in this world, soul jades are extremely rare. After they heard this, everyone instantly understood that finding a soul jade depended more on luck than hard work. Apart from that, there's also something called soul crystals in this world. Although soul crystals sound similar in name to soul jades, they're completely different things. Gao Shueting did her best to explain in as much detail as possible so that the newcomers to this world would have a better understanding. You can think of soul crystals as the equivalent of source crystals on our side. Soul crystals are the currency of this world, and although they can also be used to cultivate, their efficiency isn't very good. Disciple understands. Xianxia and the others nodded with serious expressions. This wondrous world has countless mysterious products, the majority of which are tremendously helpful for the soul. You'll naturally understand if you have the opportunity to encounter them. Gao Shueting looked around and spoke in a calm tone. Also, thanks to Xiaxiang's fight just now, you should be able to tell that only soul-type artifacts and soul-secret techniques can be used here. When entering the Divine Ascension Mirror, it is impossible to bring most of the items on our physical bodies. However, anything related to the soul can pass through without a problem. All of you should check your belongings and ascertain what you have that you can use, so that you're not caught unprepared by a powerful enemy. Everyone immediately started to check themselves after she spoke. Yang Kai used his divine sense to scan himself and immediately found the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield that Gao Shueting had previously given him. This was a soul-type artifact, so it was only natural that it could enter the Divine Ascension Mirror world. Yang Kai only had to use a thought to activate it, causing a solid-seeming layer of purple light to appear around his current body. However, apart from this soul-type artifact that could obviously be brought along with him, Yang Kai actually discovered some items that he never would have expected. The soul-warming lotus. Yang Kai had a speechless expression as he looked over a certain part within his body where a 7-colored lotus bloomed. He thought to himself, although the soul-warming lotus isn't an artifact, it's related to the soul, and it's always been in my knowledge sea, so it's natural that it was brought along. But why did these guys also come along? Yang Kai was referring to the soul-devouring insects that he obtained long ago in Tongshan realm. He had obtained these soul-devouring insects many years ago, and due to his conflagrated knowledge sea's special attribute, he wasn't afraid of these exotic ancient insects and had even borrowed the soul-warming lotus's effect to tame them and make them fight for him. The soul-devouring insects had been kept in the soul-warming lotus's illusionary 7-colored island over all these years, and they had become even stronger thanks to the soul-warming lotus's nourishment. Most critically, last time outside Maplewood City, when Xianxia underwent his demon transformation, the soul-devouring insects had rampaged once and at that time madly devoured the ancient demon's demon chi in Xianxia's knowledge sea. The insects' appearance changed greatly back then, becoming pitch black, all of them giving off a feeling of wickedness and violence. It was obvious that they wouldn't be good to antagonize. At this moment, these countless soul-devouring insects had also come here together with the soul-warming lotus and were residing atop the soul-warming lotus as they were nourished within Xianxia's soul avatar. Xianxia's face couldn't help but darken when he found the soul-devouring insects. This couldn't be helped. If these guys were exposed, Gao Shueting would likely soon connect them to the ancient demon, because Xianxia had fought against Gao Shueting while in his demon form outside of Maplewood City. An emperor like Gao Shueting would of course remember such a unique power. It might even be that Gao Shueting would recognize Xianxia as the demon from that day. Xianxia really wouldn't be able to explain himself if that happened. After thinking of this, Xianxia secretly resolved that no matter what, he couldn't allow these soul-devouring insects to appear in front of Gao Shueting. Otherwise, the consequences would be dire. After he finished checking the soul-warming lotus and soul-devouring insects, Xianxia then saw something else in his soul avatar. Something that he never expected to see. This thing is also a soul-type artifact. I never knew. Xianxia was referring to a sword, a certain blade that he hadn't finished refining, and in fact hadn't even used. He never expected that it would enter the divine Ascension mirror and follow his soul avatar here. This discovery shocked Xianxia as well as gave him a pleasant surprise since he had possessed this blade for many years already. Now that he had this blade at his side, perhaps it would have some miraculous effect in a time of danger. Although Xianxia was thinking many things in his mind, his expression remained calm. Gao Shueting glanced at him and inspected the defensive prowess of his purple sun profound light shield, nodding slightly at what she saw. She had given this artifact to Xianxia not long ago, so it was already quite something that he had refined it to the point where he could control it as he pleased in such a short period of time. After a while, Gao Shueting saw that everyone was just about finished with their self-inspections, so she mentioned, "Now I will be taking you all to a certain place. It's the norm for the temple's disciples to train at this place every time we enter this world. You all must obediently stay there and train. You absolutely cannot run around." "Yes," everyone responded in unison. However, Xiaxing acutely noticed something as he looked at Gao Shueting with suspicion. "Elder Gao, you're not coming with us?" Her words made it sound like Gao Shueting was only in charge of bringing everyone there, and that she wouldn't actually stay with them. Gao Shueting shook her head. "I have something else to do. However, you guys can rest assured that the training location isn't too dangerous. As long as you guys behave, there won't be any major problems." "Understood." Xiaxing nodded with a serious expression. "Elder Gao, please rest assured as well, as long as Disciple is here, he will ensure everyone's safety." Gao Shueting glanced at him with a look of some praise and waved her pretty hand. "Let's go." As she spoke, she flew off towards a certain direction. Everyone hurried to follow her. As they traveled, they would occasionally meet some monster beasts blocking the way. Whenever this happened, Gao Shueting would have one member of the disciples go down to fight and get accustomed to their own condition as well as the special traits of the living beings here. The Dao Source Realm disciples were all elites among elites and could naturally adapt quite easily. One day later, everyone had almost completely lost their original sense of discomfort and were able to fight freely. In general, their soul avatars could not display as much power as when they were in their physical bodies, and they also had far fewer techniques they could use against their enemies. This couldn't be helped as they were currently lacking physical bodies and their normal artifacts. They were also unable to use most of their secret techniques when they fought and could only rely on soul-type artifacts or pure spiritual energy attacks. Thus, most fights in the Divine Ascension Mirror were simple and direct, without any overly fancy or complex techniques. Xianxia's unusualness really showed itself here. When outside, others would only pay attention to his cultivation, and to experts, a first-order Dao source realm wasn't even worth mentioning. However, Xianxia seemed to be rather different from everyone else in this world that soul avatars reigned over. His soul avatar's strength even faintly surpassed that of Xiaxing's. not to mention Xiao Bai Yi, Murong Xiao Xiao, and Chen Mu Ji. Yang Kai was originally the one with the lowest cultivation level amongst them, but upon entering the divine ascension mirror, he actually became the strongest, and it was impossible for him to conceal this fact. This obvious contrast really astonished the others, and they all became quite curious about just how he had cultivated his spiritual energy and how he managed to cultivate his own soul to such a degree. However, since they weren't from the same sect, they couldn't really ask something like this, as it was treading upon his personal secrets. Even Gao Xueting couldn't help but show some astonishment. One day later, everyone saw a wide mountain range that extended beyond the horizon. Gao Xueting had everyone stop at the foot of the mountains. These are the heavenly monster mountains of the divine ascension mirror world. There are countless monster beasts inside here, and you can feel free to hunt them once you enter and obtain soul sources to improve your souls. However, this queen must remind you all that there are some monster beasts within the heavenly monster mountains that even this queen cannot afford to antagonize. Thus, you shouldn't enter too deeply into the mountains. As long as you remain in the outskirts, roughly 20,000 kilometers or so from here, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Everyone's expressions couldn't help but become serious as they nodded to show that they understood what she meant. The heavenly monster mountains doesn't only have monster beasts. There are also some cultivators from the divine ascension mirror within. If you see them, try not to interact with them. However, if you do come into contact, don't reveal any information about the outside world. This is very important. Of course, apart from these, there are also the soul jades, soul crystals, and so on that I mentioned to you before. The mid-rank soul jade that this queen obtained before was from the heavenly monster mountains. Upon hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up as they all began to roll up their sleeves. Also, our soul avatar cannot leave our physical bodies for too long, otherwise some unforeseeable consequences might occur. That is why you are limited to training here for only 1 month. 1 month from now, the stone room tokens will automatically activate the seal, which will forcibly drag your soul avatar back to our world. That's why you must properly make use of this time. Elder Murong Xiao Xiao suddenly spoke up. If we meet some danger that's difficult for us to deal with, what should we do? Escape. Gao Xueting's words were simple and direct. If you can't escape, then stall for time. Stall until the 1-month time limit. She then glanced over at everyone with her beautiful eyes. This is a trial. If you can't surpass it? She furrowed her delicate brow slightly and didn't say any more, but everyone knew what she meant. Cultivators would always encounter all kinds of danger on their path, so everyone was already accustomed to this type of situation and didn't have anything to complain about. Very good. This queen has led you all here, and now the rest is up to yourselves. Go in. Gao Xueting waved her hand at everyone after she said this. Xiaxiang and the others exchanged glances before nodding and entering the heavenly monster mountains. Gao Xueting stood where she was until everyone's figures disappeared from her line of sight. Only then did she flash away and fly in a different direction. When she entered the divine ascension mirror this time, not only was she responsible for leading the way for Xiaxiang and the others and explaining some common knowledge about this world to them, she also had a personal matter to attend to, refining one of her own soul-type artifacts. This soul-type artifact had been with her for many years as she warmed it with her emperor intent and nourished it with her emperor chi. As such, it was now close to evolving into an emperor artifact. An emperor-grade soul-type artifact was a very rare treasure, with few in existence throughout the entire star boundary. An ordinary emperor realm master might have 1 or 2 emperor artifacts that they spend a great deal of effort on refining, but as for soul emperor artifacts, the vast majority of emperors would not possess such a thing. If things succeeded this time, then Gao Xueting would possess a soul-type emperor artifact, allowing her to fully focus on offense when fighting an enemy, as she would no longer need to defend the gaps in her knowledge sea. This would be a great boon to her. The last time that she entered the divine ascension mirror world, she happened to save the life of a local cultivator who was also at the emperor realm. At the time, that cultivator had been severely injured and was being hunted by a vicious monster beast. When Gao Xueting saw this, she went up to help without any hesitation, and the two of them together managed to kill that monster beast. That cultivator was extremely grateful for Gao Shueting's kindness and invited her back to his sect. Gao Shueting also wanted to find out more about all sorts of information regarding the Divine Ascension Mirror World, so she agreed. When Gao Shueting went to the sect named Soul Grasping Sect, she learned then that the person she saved was actually the sect master. The sect master of Soul Grasping Sect wasn't a wicked person and treated Gao Shueting as an honored guest since she had saved his life. Elder Gao was powerful and beautiful, so apart from having a cold aura, just about everything else about her was perfect. This sect master thus treated Gao Shueting very politely and kept trying to flatter her in an attempt to win her heart. Gao Shueting learned last time through idle chatter that there was a mystical place called Soul Gathering Lake within the Soul Grasping Sect, and that this place was capable of helping her refine her soul-type artifact. Now, Gao Shueting was heading for the Soul Grasping Sect, because she wanted to ask the sect master to let her borrow the Soul Gathering Lake. In Gao Shueting's opinion, since she had saved that sect master's life previously, there shouldn't be any problems with this request. At the same time, in a certain location within the Divine Ascension Mirror World, there was a giant city that stretched several tens of thousands of kilometers in every direction, an incomparably large area. The city walls were several tens of meters tall and encircled the city like a well-armed fortress. From a distance, a majestic aura seemed to overflow from this place. The city was filled with bustling people to the point where many walked shoulder to shoulder along the busy streets. Although this was a city within the Divine Ascension Mirror, it looked identical to cities in the outside world. There were street-side vendors, forests, wide streets, intersections, and an assortment of buildings. This was the capital of Divine Ascension Country, Divine Ascension City. Unlike the outside world where there were countless sects and families, with each force managing their own territory, in the Divine Ascension Mirror World, it was the Divine Ascension Country that was in charge of everything. All sects and families were under the management of the Divine Ascension Country. Here, the Divine Ascension Country had unlimited authority and power over everything. It was said that long, long ago, there was no Divine Ascension Country here, and that this world structure was identical to the outside world, with sects and families each having their own territory and ruling like kings. But ever since the current ruler of the Divine Ascension Country appeared, all forces were united by them and the Divine Ascension Country came to be. Now, no one dared go against their command. The current ruler was an astonishing genius with the ability to split the heavens and shatter the earth. There were also a large number of experts who swore fealty to this ruler, and their achievements had all become the stuff of legend, stories all mothers taught to their children. Under their rule, the entire Divine Ascension Country's power rose daily, leading to a bright future. Although this entire world was basically under this one person's rule now, the appearance of the Divine Ascension Country had indeed managed to help people avoid lots of unnecessary slaughter and conflict, which was a wonderful achievement already. At this moment, in the palace of Divine Ascension City, the great General Zhou Dian, guardian of the Divine Ascension Kingdom, was busy fondling two beautiful women on his left and right as he enjoyed wine and a rowdy party. Zhou Dian was someone who had a tough and sturdy build, a vicious appearance, and was nearly 2 meters tall, a full size larger than ordinary people. He had followed the ruler of Divine Ascension Country in the early days and fought across the world, helping to establish the country with his blade. That was why Zhou Dian was rewarded as he deserved after the Divine Ascension Country was established and given the title of Guardian of the Country, meaning that he was beneath one person and above all others. Currently, the Divine Ascension Mirror World had been at complete peace for the past 100 years and had no major wars for the past 1,000 years. As the guardian of the country, Zhou Dian was so bored that he was growing mold. He was a master at the Third Order Emperor realm already, so he felt that continuing to cultivate didn't have much meaning. As such, he started indulging himself in a life of debauchery. Normally, he would stay in his palace and collect beautiful women from everywhere as he lived his life freely as he pleased. Currently, a group of young women were singing and dancing beneath the throne, wearing revealing clothing as they danced, causing their beautiful figures to be faintly exposed. These women were really seductive as they sent flirtatious gazes and had expressions filled with desire. They all showed their most beautiful side to Zhou Dian in an effort to attract his attention. Zhou Dian was holding various beauties of different types in his left and right hands as he drank delicious wine and ate spirit fruits. His expression was one of satisfaction and delight. The divine Ascension mirror world had countless special products that couldn't be found in the outside world. For instance, the spirit fruits laid out before Zhou Dian were a local specialty of the divine Ascension mirror world. Eating these would be greatly beneficial to the soul, so they were extremely precious and expensive. Yet Zhou Dian was treating them as a regular fruit that he could feast on. It was quite a wasteful extravagance. The sound of laughter, the sounds of seduction, the sounds of flirtation, and Zhou Dian's loud laughter filled this palace. Suddenly, though, all the noise abruptly stopped. All sounds seemed to suddenly be cut off by an invisible force. An unimaginable pressure descended from the sky as a figure came in from outside. Even without seeing that figure, the singing and dancing women beneath the throne could sense that a giant shadow had appeared behind them. This shadow seemed capable of devouring all of their light as they trembled in fear. Zhou Dian also widened his mouth and stared at the figure with shock as it came in. A spirit fruit that resembled a grape fell out of his mouth, but he didn't even notice. The shadow seemed to be walking slowly, but it instantly entered the palace upon a glance. This figure was draped in a large pitch-black robe that enveloped it completely. It was also wearing a demon mask that looked vicious and terrifying. It was impossible to tell if this person was male or female just from their physical appearance. In fact, if this person walked around in the palace, at least 90% of people wouldn't recognize them. But Zhou Dian was different. The moment that this person appeared, Zhou Dian immediately wiped his mouth as his body shook. Tossing away the two women that had been in his embrace, he hurried forward over 10 meters to stand before this person. He then bowed with a serious expression and kneeled on one knee as he declared in a low voice, "The guardian of the country, great General Zhou Dian, greets the Lord King." All of the dancing women wore expressions of astonishment upon hearing this. Although they knew that the ruler was in this palace, not a single one of the women had ever seen him ever since they entered. Normally, while messing around with Zhou Dian, they had also joked before to Zhou Dian that he should take them to meet the ruler so that they could see the astounding master who almost single-handedly established the divine Ascension country. But whenever this was mentioned, Zhou Dian would always change the topic and never agree. But today, this legendary figure had suddenly appeared before them. They were truly shocked and surprised by this. Along with their shock and surprise, they also looked at this person with curiosity. However, they couldn't see any characteristics about their king at all. The ruler's large black cape and demon mask obscured their face and figure completely. There wasn't even a bit of skin exposed from this image. It was also impossible to determine this person's gender from their body shape. In fact, looking for too long caused the women in the hall to feel dizziness and headaches, scaring them into hurriedly averting their gazes. "Rise!" The person before Zhou Dian spoke in a light tone. This was a raspy voice that sounded rather neutral, once again making it impossible to determine if they were male or female. "Yes, Lord King," Zhou Dian replied in a low voice as he stood up while continuing to bow slightly, looking at his master with some wonder. "Lord King, what matter have you come to find this subordinate for?" Ever since the ruler created the divine Ascension country, they had basically not asked Zhou Dian to do anything at all. Zhou Dian never expected that the Lord King would come to find him of their own volition and could faintly sense that something major was likely going to occur. Zhou Dian quietly waited for the answer after he asked this. However, the Lord King didn't speak for a long time. Only much later did the raspy voice finally answer. "The Star of Calamity has appeared in the heavenly monster mountains and has shaken the country's fate. Great chaos is about to arrive." "What?" Zhou Dian's expression changed as he called out in alarm. "Such a thing actually happened?" He viciously gnashed his teeth while the cruelty that he usually kept concealed suddenly exposed itself as he grinned viciously. "Lord King, rest assured. Subordinate shall send someone immediately." "You go." "Personally." The Lord King interrupted him. Zhou Dian was astonished to hear this, but he soon nodded. "Subordinate understands. I will definitely live up to the Lord King's expectations." "Good," the Lord King said lightly before turning around and leaving. A moment later, they were gone. A sentence wafted over from the distance at the same time. Capture them alive! Zhou Dian cupped his fists towards the voice's direction. Understood. After that, he actually began to laugh out loud as he muttered in a cold voice. Finally, I have something to do. I hope that this trip won't make this general too bored. Could you take me with you? I'd also like to see Sir's amazing countenance in battle. I want to go as well. Me too. Me too. The women gathered around and kept chattering endlessly. Zhou Dian laughed viciously as he looked around him. Suddenly, he coldly snorted as an invisible force spread out and knocked all the women away. The beauties all fell down and started screaming in pain. Unstable lights flashed on their bodies, indicating that their souls had been damaged severely. When men are working, women should stay put, Zhou Dian declared as he strode out of the palace with large steps. He was playing around intimately with these women just earlier, yet he actually treated them like this and cast them aside in the next. It could be seen that he was subject to shifting moods and had a cruel personality. Not long after, Zhou Dian gathered his army and left the palace with great force as he headed towards Heavenly Monster Mountains. Currently in a valley of the Heavenly Monster Mountains, a peak 11th Order Earth Tortoise was struggling in battle as several figures weaved around it. Xianxia sliced with his sword, using it to send out blades of spiritual energy that cut into the weak spots of the Earth Tortoise's neck. The monster beast instantly roared in pain from the strike and tried to withdraw. Xiao Baiyi's soul-type artifact was similar to the artifacts that he used with his physical body, since they were all sword artifacts. Here, he was even using his spiritual energy to use the secret techniques that he normally used. Although it seemed a bit strange, the power was still significant. The spiritual energy sword waves sliced over to block the Earth Tortoise's path of retreat. Murong Xiao had a serious expression as she skillfully wielded a long whip. The whip left many afterimages as all the attacks surrounded the monster beast and stopped it from moving. However, even though her whip seemed beautiful in its movements, it lacked murderous intent. Meanwhile, Chun Muji's soul-type artifact was a flying sword. As he threw it with his divine sense injected in it, it stirred up astonishing winds as it kept whittling down the monster beast's stamina. Yang Kai wore the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield as he engaged in melee combat with the Earth Tortoise, his fists pounding as he unleashed a flurry of punches. The 5 Dao Source Realm cultivators surrounded and attacked a monster beast at the peak of Dao Source Realm, yet they were actually unable to defeat it despite how long they'd been fighting. This wasn't Yang Kai and the others' fault though. It was simply that the monster beast's defenses were too astonishing. The thick tortoiseshell seemed to be harder than metal, and any time a truly threatening attack came, it would retract its 4 limbs and its head into its shell. When the attack slowed down, the tortoise would poke its head out and spit something that resembled a spray of energy balls. These energy balls formed a dense bombardment and were quite difficult for Yang Kai and the others to deal with. Of the 5 people present, Yang Kai was the only one who possessed a defensive artifact that allowed him to engage the tortoise in melee combat. The other 4 didn't dare to get too close, as they might die if they weren't careful enough and got pelted by an attack. If it wasn't for the fact that the tortoise was extremely slow, Yang Kai and the others wouldn't have bothered to fight it. Still, such a monster beast helped everyone to soon understand their limits and weaknesses. After a long fight, the Earth Tortoise's surface flickered, seeming to indicate that it was reaching its limits. Xianxia shouted loudly as he and his sword attacked together from the sky, descending with the force of a meteor. Xiao Baiyi and the others also used their techniques on the monster beast together. Upon seeing this, Yang Kai fainted and then retreated so that he wouldn't get caught in friendly fire from everyone's attacks. Hong hong hong. There was the sound of energy explosions that wouldn't stop for quite a long time. When the dust finally settled, the Earth Tortoise collapsed quietly on the ground and wasn't moving anymore. In front of everyone's eyes, its body gradually vanished and dissipated into this land, leaving only a small bean-sized ball of light. The ball of light's color, brightness, and size were all incomparable to the one everyone saw from the previous monster beast. This one was at the peak of the 11th Order, after all. However, even though the victory loot was right before them, nobody was in a hurry to take it. Instead, everyone stood where they were with furrowed eyebrows and contemplative expressions. Everyone seemed to gain something as their expressions flickered. In this place, our past combat experience doesn't seem to be very useful. Xiaoshang was the first to speak. Xiao Bai nodded. I think everyone's noticed now that it's difficult to fight because it feels like you're being restrained. Is it because we're in our soul avatars? Morong Xiao considered it as she answered. Probably. Chun Muji nodded in agreement. Since they were in their soul avatars, they were unable to use many skills and secret techniques that they were accustomed to using. They were also unable to use their typical artifacts, which naturally meant that everyone would feel uncomfortable during battle. Additionally, these types of soul battles were typically avoided by all cultivators as much as possible. Normally, if the two cultivators were at about the same power level, they wouldn't choose to fight with their divine senses because such a fight was far too dangerous. A moment of carelessness would be enough to lead to the loss of one's consciousness or becoming an idiot. However, they didn't have the choice of being able to fight in other ways in this divine Ascension mirror world. In that case, many problems that they had never considered or happened upon would now appear. For instance, when they were attacked in the outside world, they could instantly cancel out the attack or even counter it by meeting it head-on with their own strength. However, in this place, when a strong attack was launched at them, everyone's first reaction was to dodge, so that their souls wouldn't get injured. It seems that there's still much room for us to grow. Xiaoshang wryly smiled as he added, let's not think about it for the time being. This soul source? He glanced at everyone before he stopped at Chun Muji. Junior brother Chun, you take this one. He then looked at Yang Kai and inquired, Brother Yang, you don't have any objections, right? I have none. Yang Kai shook his head. Xiaoshang nodded. Chun Muji didn't refuse. He thanked Xiaoshang and immediately took the soul source as he began to cultivate and absorb it. Not long after, he finished absorbing the soul source. Although it wasn't too evident, Chun Muji's soul strength had indeed increased slightly. It could be seen by the look of delight on his face. It was a peak 11th order monster beast after all. The person absorbing the soul source would be able to feel their own increase in spiritual energy. Let's continue, Xiaoshang said as he led the way forward in search of prey. 2 days passed by in the blink of an eye. In these 2 days, Yang Kai and the others supported each other in the heavenly monster mountains. They met many monster beasts, but they were able to safely kill these enemies each time. Under Xiaoshang's leadership, the spoils of battle, soul sources, were divided up relatively evenly. Yang Kai absorbed a total of 9 9th order monster beasts, 5 10th orders, and 2 11th order monster beast soul sources. His spiritual energy was evidently stronger than when he first entered this place. The others had also obtained good harvests. For instance, Chun Muji had the weakest spiritual energy among them, but his growth was evident for all to see. There really were countless monster beasts in the heavenly monster mountain. The beasts mostly roamed freely, so there was no need for the group to intentionally search for them as they were easy to find. The group had no intentions of killing monster beasts that were too weak, since they wouldn't gain much even if they did kill such beasts, and basically only targeted existences that were 9th order and above. Maybe it was because they were still only on the outskirts of the mountains, but they hadn't met any 12th order beasts as of yet. Of course, if they actually did meet a 12th order monster beast, they would only be able to run away. As the group fought difficult battles over the past 2 days, their conditions also improved greatly. It was evident that they had acclimated significantly to this new world, and if the 5 of them were to meet an earth tortoise again similar to the one they first encountered again, with their current strength and experience, they would likely only need half a cup of tea time to kill it. In other words, everyone had become completely accustomed to this place and their soul bodies, along with the way of fighting required here. As the group rested, Xiaoshang suddenly spoke up. Everyone, I have a suggestion, but I don't know if I should say it or not. Is it to act separately? Xiao Baiyi had an expression of, I know exactly what you're thinking. Xiaoshang smiled. Xiao Bai really understands me best, although it's definitely safer for the 5 of us to work together. Acting as a group like this is rather inefficient. Elder Gao said before that we only have 1 month in this world. and that the token seal will activate after that time and forcibly take us back to our world. It may be a long time before we are able to enter the divine Ascension mirror again. So we must properly take advantage of this great opportunity in order to treat ourselves. Rather than acting together for safety, this senior brother prefers to act separately. Although there will be a certain amount of danger, our potential, isn't it always forced out when we're in danger? His eyes shone with mysterious confidence and excitement. If we keep growing up in a safe environment, it will be too late if we meet with actual danger in the future. Actually, Xiao Bai suddenly spoke up with a slow tone. I agree. His implicit meaning was that he had some worries about saying this idea out loud before. Separate. Morong Xiao hesitated slightly, but she soon resolved herself and nodded. Good. Xiaoshang saw that even she agreed, so he turned to look at Chen Muji. Chen Muji smiled and said, Senior brothers and senior sister don't need to worry about me. Although I have the lowest soul cultivation here, I will do what I can based on my own strength. I'm still a disciple of the temple after all. Very good. Xiaoshang looked at him with satisfaction before turning to look at Yang Kai and grinning. Brother Yang definitely has no objections here. I'm fine with anything. Yang Kai replied calmly. It was a coincidental opportunity that he could enter the divine Ascension mirror to begin with, which was why he didn't raise any objections or make any requests. If Xiaoshang and the others insisted on acting together, Yang Kai would cooperate, but since they were going to separate, he was happy to comply. Of course, if he had to choose, he would prefer to separate. There were many techniques that he didn't dare to use when traveling together with Xiaoshang and the others, so the feeling of being restricted was quite bothersome to him. In that case, senior brother wishes everyone good luck. Xiaoshang glanced at everyone with a serious expression. Stay safe and return alive. I'll be leaving first. Xiao Bai was quite decisive, immediately setting off after it was decided that they would separate. Senior brother, stay safe. Morong Xiao then glanced at Yang Kai and Chen Muji. You two stay safe as well. Sister Morong, you must also be careful. Yang Kai smiled in response. Morong Xiao nodded, her tender body flickering as she shot off in a different direction. I'll be leaving as well then. As Chen Muji spoke, he stood up, nodded slightly at Xiaoshang and Yang Kai, then disappeared using his movement skill. Soon, only Xiaoshang and Yang Kai remained. Xiaoshang smiled as he looked at Yang Kai and asked, Brother Yang, what direction are you going to choose? That way. Yang Kai pointed in a different direction from the others. Xiaoshang narrowed his eyes slightly as he exclaimed, You're going deeper into the mountains. Brother Yang, you need to be careful. Elder Gao mentioned that there are many existences that even she doesn't dare to antagonize in these heavenly monster mountains. I will also judge based on my strength. I won't get greedy. Yang Kai smiled. That's for the best. Xiaoshang nodded. Then, this Xia shall take his leave. See you again when we leave this world. As Xiaoshang said this, he rose into the air and flew in a certain direction. His direction was also deeper into the heavenly monster mountains, but different from where Yang Kai had pointed. Xiaoshang's figure soon disappeared. Only then did Yang Kai slowly stand up, turn to the depths of the heavenly monster mountain, and mutter in a low voice, It's time to let myself loose and do something big. At the same time, at the foot of the heavenly monster mountains, a group of several hundred people arrived in grand fashion and stopped at an empty clearing. This group was obviously a well-trained military squadron, since even with several hundred people together, their formation wasn't messy at all. They moved in an orderly fashion, and the several hundred people actually stood there without a sound. There was only a chilly aura that encircled them, like that of a hidden dragon that had just come out into the world to sit above the scattered clouds in the sky. There was a large flag fluttering in the wind at the head of this squadron. On the back of the flag was a vivid tiger descending the mountain. It showed fangs and a fierce aura that seemed like it was about to pounce out of the flag. On the front of the flag was a large Zhou character. The character was written with great energy that made it seem like a flying dragon. This was the elite army of the Guardian of Divine Ascension country, Zhou Dian's subordinates. At this moment, Zhou Dian was riding on a snow-white nine-horned dragon beast. He wasn't wearing any armor as he simply wore his regular clothes, but the murderous aura around him was still quite chilling. Zhou Dian chuckled coldly as he looked at the nearby heavenly monster mountains. How nostalgic! The last time I came here was more than 2,000 years ago. I never thought that I would return here again in my lifetime. As he talked to himself, not a single one of his subordinates dared to utter a sound. A moment later, Zhou Dian suddenly shouted, Lian Yan, Ban Qing, you man, Yuan Qing. For people stepped out together and cupped their fists in unison. Subordinate is present. These four all possessed powerful First-Order Emperor realm cultivations and were the four strongest warriors under Zhou Dian's command. Zhou Dian had naturally brought them along since he was here on the king's orders to capture the Star of Calamity in the heavenly monster mountains. There were 3 men and 1 woman. Lian Yan had red hair that reached his waist. He looked rather ostentatious, and judging from the faint red light glowing on his body, his spiritual energy had some special attribute. Ban Qing was short and had an ordinary appearance. However, he was highly skilled at assassination. Ban Qing was capable of getting close to even someone as strong as Zhou Dian for an attack if the latter wasn't on guard. Yu Man appeared to be about 30 years old and had a curvaceous figure. As she moved, a mature atmosphere seemed to waft from her. She had a high-nosed bridge that accentuated her elegant features, and her alluring red lips caused people to have endless fantasies. The last one, Yuan Qing, had cultivated some unknown secret technique or secret art that gave him a soft and shadowy feeling, and coupled with his feminine appearance, he was so beautiful that even most women couldn't compare to him. These 4 had greatly contributed to the establishment of the divine Ascension country. They had followed Zhou Dian to conquer the world since early on, and had rarely met any opponents throughout the land. Even in all of the divine Ascension mirror world, they were considered famous masters. However, their strength was overwhelmed by Zhou Dian's sharpness when they were in front of him. Go in 4 separate directions and search the mountains. You must find the Star of Calamity as quickly as possible. Capture them alive, and bring them before the Lord King. Zhou Dian pointed while announcing in a low voice. Yes. The 4 of them accepted in unison as they immediately split the soldiers into 4 groups and swiftly disappeared into the heavenly monster mountains. Zhou Dian remained where he was by himself. A cold wind blew past and caused Zhou Dian's hair to flow in the wind. A long time later, he finally urged the 9-horned dragon beast under him to go forward. The monster beast he rode was 12th order. Even though it was in its early stages, it was still the equivalent of a first-order emperor in terms of strength. Even so, this beast could only obediently let Zhou Dian ride it. Back in the day, Zhou Dian had spent a significant amount of effort and time in order to finally tame this monster beast. Zhou Dian's eyes mysteriously flashed with the desire to do battle as he looked deep into the heavenly monster mountains. It was as if there was an opponent he was highly interested in who was waiting for him within the forested mountain. Yang Kai and the others naturally had no idea of what was happening outside as they trained in the mountains. None of them expected that a simple training session would cause such a massive commotion. At this moment, Yang Kai was fighting against a Thunder Saiyan wolf in the heavenly monster mountains. This monster beast was only peak 10th order, equivalent to the first monster beast that everyone met when they first entered the Divine Ascension mirror world. But Yang Kai still wore a serious expression. This couldn't be helped, as it seemed this monster beast was somewhat different from others. It actually possessed the ability to control thunder. The arcs of lightning flashing on its body had tremendous power that worried Yang Kai somewhat. He was currently here in his soul avatar, rather than his physical body, so he wouldn't heal that quickly if he received any injuries. Even though he had the soul-warming lotus, Yang Kai still didn't dare to simply come into contact with such powerful lightning. Luckily, he didn't have any intentions of fighting personally. When acting together with Xianxia and the others, there were many techniques that he couldn't show, so he was quite limited in battle and felt quite awkward as he fought. But now he was by himself, so he naturally had nothing else to worry about. The Thunder Saiyan wolf also noticed that Yang Kai wasn't easy to deal with. Still, due to its concern about the difference in power level, it only stayed a distance from Yang Kai while constantly baring its fangs and roaring in an effort to scare Yang Kai away. Of course, Yang Kai wouldn't do as it wished. "Come out!" Yang Kai suddenly shouted. As he shouted, his body shook slightly as he waved his sleeve. A patch of dense black dots suddenly emerged mysteriously. The black dots weren't numerous at first, but then they became uncountable in the blink of an eye. They gathered into a black cloud with astonishing speed. The black cloud was the size of a table. Upon closer look, one could see quite clearly that this black cloud consisted of tiny insects that were almost impossible to see with the naked eye. Soul-devouring insects. No, they should be renamed soul-devouring demon insects. Ever since they devoured a large amount of pure demon chi in Yang Kai's knowledge sea last time, the soul-devouring insects had all become pitch black. If the insects were individually magnified, they would all have terrifying appearances with threatening, malevolent auras. The insect cloud arrived with the sound of buzzing. The Thunder Saiyan wolf obviously didn't know what this black cloud was, but its natural instinct made it feel something was amiss. The wolf actually opened its mouth when it saw the insect cloud charging at it and shot out a bolt of lightning into the swarm. The insect cloud was instantly shattered, but soon it reformed itself. Meanwhile, the Thunder Saiyan wolf actually turned and ran after releasing that one attack. It had no intention of staying here. "Go!" Yang Kai uttered a single word. In fact, there was no need for him to issue such a command, as the soul-devouring demon insect's instinct would already make them chase after their prey. The insect cloud acted like maggots on rotting bones as it enveloped the Thunder Saiyan wolf. Even though the wolf wasn't slow at all, the insect cloud caught up in an extremely short time. The insect cloud simply descended upon and completely enveloped the monster beast. Pitiful howls instantly arose as sounds of pain kept echoing. The sounds were rather frightening to behold. The insect cloud roiled and wriggled like a living being. Yang Kai silently stood where he was and observed everything. The Thunder Saiyan wolf's aura was weakening at a rate that wasn't fast or slow. The power is still a bit lacking. Yang Kai mulled things over. Although the soul-devouring insects had a special trait that countless living beings would be afraid of, Yang Kai's soul-devouring insects had been raised from a very low level, and over the years he hadn't invested a lot of effort into them. All he did was to place them in the soul-warming lotus's illusionary treasure island and let them freely live and evolve by themselves. Even though quite some time had passed and they had grown significantly, they still didn't live up to Yang Kai's requirements for the current level of battle. A 10th-order monster beast was only at the level of an origin king. In the outside world, if Yang Kai personally attacked, he could win against such an opponent with a wave of his hand. However, when using the soul-devouring demon insects, it actually required some time and effort to win. However, this divine Ascension mirror world seemed to be a paradise for the soul-devouring insects to grow stronger in. If Yang Kai used this place well, perhaps the soul-devouring demon insects would change massively in this 1 month. At that time, Yang Kai would then possess another trump card, one that would be almost impossible to be on guard against. Thus, Yang Kai made up his mind to use the special composition of this world and his remaining time here to properly raise the soul-devouring demon insects. While he was thinking so, the insect cloud started moving about at an even faster speed, while the Thunder Saiyan wolf's howls gradually weakened and died down. Some time later, the wolf finally stopped moving. Yang Kai saw things quite clearly. He discovered that the soul-devouring demon insects were rapidly devouring the Thunder Saiyan wolf's body. All living beings here were soul avatars, after all, so they did not possess physical bodies. This meant they were the soul-devouring demon insects' favorite food. If Yang Kai personally killed the wolf, then the wolf would lose most of its spiritual energy after its death, and that energy would return to this world, leaving only the soul source behind. However, things were different if the soul-devouring demon insects devoured the wolf instead. The energy that should have originally dissipated instead entered the soul-devouring demon insects' bodies and became a resource for them to become stronger. The only thing that Yang Kai worried about was that he couldn't afford to let the soul-devouring demon insects also devour the monster beast's soul source. If that happened, then he really wouldn't gain anything at all. That wasn't what he wanted. Strengthening himself was the most important thing on this training opportunity, while having the soul-devouring demon insects become stronger was only a secondary concern. Yang Kai knew quite clearly what was more important. Thus, Xianxia used his divine sense to issue a command to the insect cloud after some time. The insect cloud was quite obedient. Perhaps it was due to staying in Xianxia's knowledge sea for many years that they now carried out his orders obediently. Once the insect cloud received the message, it immediately left the Thunder Cyan Wolf's corpse and flew back into Xianxia's sleeve. When he looked over, the Thunder Cyan Wolf had been almost completely devoured, leaving only a pea-sized faint yellow ball of light behind. Xianxia nodded in satisfaction as he walked over and absorbed the ball of light into his body. Not long after, he set out again and proceeded forward. As he traveled, he didn't meet any monster beasts that were too strong. Every single monster beast became food for his insect cloud. Xianxia simply needed to stand quietly by the side and obtain the soul sources left from the deaths of the monster beasts. This was unimaginably easy. This was another benefit of him acting alone. He didn't need to spend too much effort in order to make gains. If he was instead together with Xiaoshang and the others, he never would have released these soul-devouring demon insects. And as time passed, Xianxia gradually discovered something that he was interested in. Basically, the soul-devouring demon insects seemed capable of absorbing the strange energy of this world while staying in his sleeve in order to constantly strengthen themselves. When he thought about it more carefully, this seemed natural. The world energy of this world was completely different from the world energy of the outside world. The outside world's world energy could be absorbed by a cultivator's physical body so their cultivator could gradually become stronger. However, the world energy here could be absorbed by all living beings' soul avatars in order to strengthen their souls. The soul-devouring demon insects were naturally no exception. The world energy that was present everywhere here was the most delicious food that they desired. This place is an absolute treasure. Xianxia was filled with excitement. He gained tremendous benefits as he traveled. In just 2 days' time, Xianxia managed to use the soul-devouring demon insects to kill at least 70 to 80 monster beasts, which were all completely devoured by his insects. Of course, Xianxia picked up all the remnant soul sources for free. This helped his divine sense to become ever stronger and more solid, when he was already near third-order Dao Source Realm Divine Sense level. In fact, it even faintly seemed like it was reaching Emperor Realm Divine Sense level. Not only was Xianxia's divine sense gradually improving, even the soul-devouring demon insect's growth was rather evident. At first, the soul-devouring insects needed a cup of tea's time to kill a 10th-order Thunder Cyan Wolf, but now the time required had been shortened by more than half. The insect's growth was even more obvious than Xianxia's. Xianxia was absolutely delighted by such a tremendous harvest. He felt more certain that it had been a wise decision for him to act separately from Xiaoshang and the others. According to what Gao Shueting said, absorbing a single 10th-order monster beast soul source was the equivalent of cultivating hard for 7 to 8 days outside. Meanwhile, absorbing an 11th-order monster beast soul source was the equivalent of cultivating hard for 20 days. In just 2 short days, Xianxia had benefited so much that it was the equivalent of him cultivating for 3 to 4 years. Not to mention, he would have needed to use special soul cultivation secret arts in order to obtain such results. If he had stayed with Xiaoshang and the others, he never would have gained so much. Still, he was the only one who could accomplish this. This was because he had the soul-devouring demon insects. He only needed to watch from the sidelines for every battle, and then he would scoop up the victory loot. He didn't need to use any energy at all, which meant he didn't need to rest. 1 day later, Xianxia's body suddenly shook slightly after he absorbed the soul source left behind from the death of an 11th-order monster beast. He couldn't help but furrow his brow. In that instant, he actually sensed some slight discomfort. This sense of discomfort had an unknown cause, but it was quite clear that he felt uncomfortable all over his entire body. Am I at my limit now? Xianxia didn't panic. He figured out the reason with just a little thought. Gao Shueting had previously said that even though absorbing soul sources left behind from living beings here could swiftly strengthen one's soul, it also had its downsides. When one absorbs to a certain extent, he would reach a state of saturation. Once that happened, it would be impossible to absorb any more soul sources, as something negative might happen to his body. Xianxia had definitely reached that point. He thought about it and felt that it was only natural. In less than 3 days, he had already used the soul-devouring demon insects to kill more than 100 monster beasts and absorbed all those soul sources for himself. Some of the monster beasts had even been 11th order. This number and speed were quite astonishing. Yang Kai estimated that it was impossible for Xianxia and the others to even have a fifth of his harvest because he hadn't needed to rest at all as he traveled. He simply needed to use his soul-devouring insects whenever he discovered some prey. Meanwhile, Xianxia and the others would need to rest for a while after every single fight, so they would have much lower efficiency. It's such a pity, Yang Kai muttered to himself. He originally had wanted to continue like this and have his spiritual energy reach the Emperor realm. Once his soul reached such a level, it would become much easier for him to cultivate in the future. But since he was already at his limit in absorption, it couldn't be helped. He could only slowly wait for his soul avatar to completely digest the soul sources that he absorbed over the past few days. Nonetheless, Yang Kai didn't slow down at all and continued forward at his original speed. Although he was unable to absorb any more soul sources for himself, his soul-devouring demon insects were still capable of growing, so it wasn't a waste. The deeper that Yang Kai went into the mountains, the more he noticed that the average monster beasts he met had stronger cultivations. At first, when he had just separated from Xianxia and the others, he would still find some 8th order, 7th order, or even weaker monster beasts. He was naturally not interested in these monster beasts and ignored them all. But as time passed, these weak monster beasts disappeared and were replaced by more powerful existences. At Yang Kai's current location, he no longer saw any 9th order or below monster beasts. All monster beasts were 10th order at the minimum. According to Yang Kai's calculations, if he went deeper into the mountains, it was likely that even 10th order monster beasts would stop appearing before him. At this moment, just as he was searching around for prey, a gust suddenly whipped up in the forest and caused the trees to shake. Unusual pressure rapidly approached from the distance, while a strange sound entered Yang Kai's ears. He couldn't help but adopt a serious expression as he focused on that direction. Lala. It sounded like something was using tremendous force to smash the trees in this forest, causing them to topple in large numbers. A moment later, a flash of purple light suddenly shot from the front with incredible speed. Yang Kai was caught by surprise because he discovered that the purple light object charging towards him was actually a small monster beast only about as big as his arm. Although a monster beast's strength couldn't be assessed from its size alone, when Yang Kai scanned it with his divine sense, he clearly sensed that this purple squirrel's level was only 9th order. Since traveling here, it had been quite some time since he discovered a 9th order monster beast, because a 9th order strength was no longer suitable to survive in this current environment. Thus, Yang Kai was somewhat surprised to see this purple squirrel appear before him. He didn't know how such a weak monster beast could survive safely in this region. Still, its speed was truly quick. Yang Kai had discovered the purple squirrel and scanned its level in just an instant, but before Yang Kai could do anything about it, the purple squirrel actually darted behind Yang Kai with a whoosh. As the human and beast passed each other by, Yang Kai saw quite clearly that the purple squirrel had a look of wonder flashing in its eyes as it kept looking at him. It was as if the purple squirrel had discovered something new and curious. This was obviously a sign of the monster beast possessing sentience. The monster beasts that Yang Kai met before hadn't possessed such intelligence, as those monster beasts simply carried out their own instinctive desire to feed and slaughter. Whenever a monster beast met Yang Kai, it would automatically attack him even if he didn't attack first. On the other hand, this little purple squirrel was obviously different from other monster beasts. However, Yang Kai didn't have the time to focus on the purple squirrel, as he had to focus forward with a serious expression. After all, there was something vicious pursuing this purple squirrel. Lala. There were more loud crashing sounds of trees falling over, and right after, a large flat head suddenly emerged from the front. Sharp scales covered the top of this head, and the scarlet patterns on its face gave it quite the vicious look. Its eyes were the size of wash basins, and its vertical green pupils sent chills down the spine of anyone who saw them. This beast's gigantic open mouth had a red tongue that kept flickering in and out as it hissed. This was a gigantic python monster beast. For some unknown reason, It had been chasing the purple squirrel all the way to Xianxia's location. When it appeared, the python's vertical pupils immediately focused on Xianxia. After that, its body gradually revealed itself to be as thick as a human was tall. Raising its head up high, it kept spitting its tongue and glaring at Xianxia with hostile intentions. "You really know how to bring trouble to others." Xianxia turned around and gave a dark look towards the purple squirrel who was peeking out with its tiny head from behind a tree nearby. When the purple squirrel saw him looking at it, it couldn't help but retract its neck. However, it soon started sneaking peeks again. It seemed to want to see if Xianxia was capable of chasing away the python. "I'll deal with you after I finish dealing with him." Xianxia chuckled as he turned around again to focus on the python. He had no reason to give up on prey that had come to him, so he was prepared to fight. The python seemed to sense that Xianxia wasn't easy to deal with, so it actually didn't immediately attack upon appearing and instead glared down at him from above. Its eyes flashed with an incredibly dangerous light. Xianxia scanned the python with his divine sense, causing his expression to become ever more serious. He discovered that this python was the strongest monster beast he had met so far, its aura fluctuations comparable to his own. In other words, the python had also reached the peak of the 11th order. If the python had some more time, it would definitely rise to the 12th order, becoming equivalent to an Emperor Realm Master. In this mirror world, strengthening the soul was the only cultivation route since there were no physical bodies. Thus, as long as one's soul strength met requirements, then one could easily rise to the next cultivation level. This python here had doubtlessly reached the threshold of the Emperor realm. After the stalemate lasted for a while, the python lost its patience first as its instinct to slaughter took over its movements. The next instant, a green light flashed in its eyes as an invisible force shot towards Xianxia. A purple light instantly exploded from Xianxia's body as the purple sun profound light shield appeared. The light screen rippled fiercely under some kind of significant invisible force. Soul impact. This was a soul technique that every monster beast here, no, every living being here knew how to use. By using one's own spiritual energy as the foundation, one could send a strong shockwave out towards an enemy. It was quite simple and direct, but also very powerful. This attack would often immediately determine the victor of a battle, especially when there was a big difference in raw strength. Xianxia had met over 100 monster beasts on the way here so far, and almost every single time, the monster beast would try to fight with this technique, so he had long since gotten accustomed to it. The Purple Sun Profound Light Shield was at least a Dao Source-grade soul-type artifact, so even though Xianxia had yet to finish refining it and couldn't use its full power, it still had good defensive strength. Not a single monster beast had been able to break through this artifact's defenses. However, the python's soul attack caused light to flash furiously upon the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield, almost shattering it. Xianxia also staggered backwards for several steps as his expression darkened slightly. As expected of a monster beast at the peak of the 11th order, even its opening attack was quite something. Meanwhile, at the same time that the python released its soul attack, it also sent its steel whip-like tail straight at Xianxia, kicking up a torrential gust of wind in the process. All trees blocking the way were all snapped instantly, so it was clear just how powerful this tail strike was. Xianxia's expression became serious when he saw this and naturally didn't dare to take this attack head-on. With a flicker, his body disappeared from where he stood. Countless trees were snapped with a tremendous sound. However, the python's attack did nothing. Not only that, it even lost track of Xianxia's whereabouts. The python's combat instincts made it somewhat uneasy as it kept spitting out its tongue at an obviously faster speed. Perhaps it sensed something as it suddenly raised its head and looked midair. By the time it looked up though, Xianxia was already descending towards its head as he shouted with anger. "You damn beast! Take one from me as well!" As he spoke, he also unleashed a similar soul impact as he gathered his own divine sense and transformed it into an invisible sword that sliced at the python's eyes. Clang clang. There were two loud sounds that seemed like metal clashing against metal as sparks flew from the python's eyelids. When Xianxia's attack was about to connect, the python instinctually closed its eyes and caused the strike to fail. However, buzzing sounds arose in the very next instant. Xianxia had already released the soul-devouring demon insects in the moment that the python closed its eyes. The black cloud surrounded by demon chi appeared and covered the sky. The demonic insects swarmed with an unstoppable might. When the soul-devouring demon insects appeared, the python's eyes actually contained a type of anthropomorphic panic similar to that of humans. It seemed to be really afraid of the demonic insects. Meanwhile, the purple squirrel that was still hiding behind a tree behind Xianxia was now trembling to the point where its eyes rolled back and it fell unconscious where it was. It seemed that these soul-devouring demon insects brought tremendous pressure to these two monster beasts. This was only natural. Soul-devouring insects were the bane of all spiritual energy. Apart from being afraid of certain types of energy like Xianxia's conflagrated knowledge sea, it was rare to find something that could kill them. Although Xianxia's soul-devouring insects originally had some weaknesses, those weaknesses had long since disappeared as the insects grew. If someone wanted to kill these soul-devouring insects, they would need to have a conflagrated knowledge sea to counter them like Xianxia did. Apart from this, other methods weren't very useful. In fact, Xianxia didn't know if even his conflagrated knowledge sea would still be effective against them or not. He was still able to control the soul-devouring insects mostly because of the soul-warming lotus. Of course, the python and the purple squirrel would be afraid of something as abnormal as these insects. When the black cloud descended, the python actually panicked and opened its mouth to spit out a verdant-colored mist that engulfed the swarm. At the same time, a terrible stench instantly spread everywhere. Poison spiritual energy. Xianxia was truly surprised as he watched this. Whether the python obtained some sort of opportunity or was born like this, it was actually capable of turning its own spiritual energy into a powerful venomous mist. The python obviously wanted to use its special spiritual energy to deal with the soul-devouring demon insects. Not only that, the python had no intentions of staying here. After it spat out that venom cloud, it actually turned and ran while ignoring Xianxia and the purple squirrel. However, the python had obviously underestimated how abnormal the soul-devouring demon insects were. The pitch-black insect cloud came into contact and clashed against the verdant mist and actually began devouring it at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just 3 breaths of time, only the pitch-black insect cloud remained. It seemed as if the entire venomous cloud had been swallowed by the soul-devouring demon insects. The poison mist was also made from spiritual energy, so it was delicious food to the soul-devouring demon insects. After the soul-devouring demon insects had this snack, they didn't linger and instead headed directly for the python. In just the blink of an eye, the insects swarmed the python's head. The python's vision was completely blocked by the insect cloud, and it began thrashing about violently like a headless flea. Xianxia silently watched for a while and couldn't help but furrow his brow. This was because he discovered that the always victorious soul-devouring demon insects were rather ineffective against this python. The python was covered all over in dense scales, and even beings as tiny as the soul-devouring demon insects were unable to break through the scales to devour the python's body. At this rate, it seemed that the soul-devouring demon insects really wouldn't be able to win unless they were able to break through the python's defenses. Xianxia suddenly had a flash of inspiration as he immediately issued a command to the soul-devouring demon insects. Controlling the soul-devouring demon insects wasn't as simple as controlling stone puppet Xiao, since the insects didn't even have any sentience. Although Xiao's sentience wasn't very high, at least he could understand Xianxia's orders. In comparison, it would obviously take a lot more energy and concentration to control these insects. Still, at least the insect cloud was rather obedient, so Xianxia only had to spend a little bit of effort to have them enter the python's body through its nose and mouth. Several dozen breaths later, the pitch-black insect cloud had completely disappeared. All that remained was the sound of buzzing that came from the python's stomach. The python seemed to be suffering unbearable torment and pain as it kept rolling around and thrashing on the ground, knocking over countless trees in the process. However, there was no way for the python to deal with such an attack that came from within its own body. All it could do was wait for its own death. As the python struggled, it seemed unwilling to simply accept its own death, so it sent out soul attacks into the nearby ground indiscriminately. Xianxia had no choice but to withdraw slightly so as to not get caught up in this violent storm. As time passed, The python's body flickered between light and dark, and its struggles gradually weakened. Finally, the python raised its head straight up before collapsing listlessly, the light from its body also going completely dim. Xianxia calmly stood where he was and waited quietly. A moment later, a hole suddenly appeared in the python's body, out of which countless soul-devouring demon insects swarmed and flew back towards Xianxia to return to his sleeve. Only then did Xianxia walk up and crouch over to look at the remaining python skin. This layer of python skin was as thin as a cicada's wings, and the scales upon the snakeskin were composed of some unknown substance. Not only were the scales incomparably sturdy, even the soul-devouring demon insects had no interest in them. That was why the soul-devouring insects flew out after they devoured the entire essence of the python. If Xianxia could take these scales with him, perhaps he would be able to craft some amazing soul-defensive artifact. Xianxia thought this as he reached out to collect the python skin. However, what he never expected was that the python skin actually broke apart like withered wood and completely shattered. Xianxia was truly surprised by this result. After a moment, he reasoned that the python's defensive power had been so amazing because of some special power of its own rather than its scales. Since the python skin was now useless, Xianxia naturally no longer needed to worry about how to take it out with him. Besides, he had no idea how he could take items from this world back to the outside world, unless it was a special item that he could absorb into his own soul avatar, such as a soul-type artifact. However, it wasn't even known if there were soul-type artifacts in this world, since everything here was created from a type of special spiritual energy. Even the mountains, land, and trees were made of this spiritual energy, so there were none of the precious ores that were required to refine artifacts. Xianxia turned back and returned to the purple squirrel's location. He was astonished to find that the supposedly unconscious purple squirrel had vanished at some unknown point. This really surprised him. It seemed that this ninth-order purple squirrel was alive because of more than luck. However, Xianxia scanned with his divine sense and immediately locked onto the purple squirrel's current location. The purple squirrel was hiding on the branch of a large tree, its small eyes shining with a kind of spirituality as it vigilantly glanced down below. Just as it was focused on observing, though, Xianxia suddenly disappeared from its sight. The purple squirrel's hairs all instinctually stood on end at that moment. Heh. You thought that I wouldn't be able to find you because you were hiding? Xianxia's cold chuckle came from behind it, and before the purple squirrel could react, Xianxia already reached out and pinched its neck to bring it before him. The purple squirrel instantly began to tremble as its eyes were filled with fear and fright, timidly gaze up at Xianxia. It seems that you don't have any abilities apart from some speed and sentience, Xianxia said contemplatively while examining the squirrel. The squirrel should have used its other abilities if it had any already. However, it didn't react even when being held so pitifully by the neck, so it obviously had nothing it could do. But as Xianxia was speaking, the purple squirrel seemed to suddenly think of something as it hurriedly stretched out with its paw to its stomach. Xianxia looked where it was pointing and saw something that really surprised him. He discovered that this purple squirrel's stomach had a pouch that seemed like it was formed naturally. He was surprised yet again. At this moment, the purple squirrel brought something out from this pouch. It was a spirit fruit that resembled a grape, one that was a deep purple and gave off a wondrous scent. Xianxia inhaled the scent and instantly felt refreshed. In fact, the discomfort that he felt from absorbing too many soul sources even seemed to lessen slightly. His eyes lit up as he focused on the purple spirit fruit. After the purple squirrel brought out the spirit fruit, it raised the fruit with both paws and extended its paws right in front of Xianxia. Its expression seemed like it was saying, "Sir, please accept this spirit fruit and spare my life." As it pitifully looked at Xianxia, Xianxia could tell that this squirrel had even more intelligence than he had expected. It was quite obvious that the squirrel wanted to use this spirit fruit to obtain his favor so that he wouldn't attack it. Xianxia was instantly amused by this and smiled at the purple squirrel, no longer giving it a difficult time as he set it down. The purple squirrel heaved a sigh of relief as it landed back on the branch. Still, it continued to hold the spirit fruit as it stood up and brought it before Xianxia. "Since you insist, I'll accept this." Xianxia lightly coughed as he took the spirit fruit from the squirrel. To be honest, he was quite curious about the spirit fruit. Although Gao Shueting mentioned previously that this world had many miraculous products with a lot of wondrous effects, Yang Kai had never thought before that this place would actually be capable of giving birth to spirit fruits. This spirit fruit was something obviously greatly beneficial to the soul. Since he couldn't take it out with him anyways, Yang Kai naturally gave up on that idea and simply tossed it into his mouth after a brief examination. A few chews later, Yang Kai swallowed the fruit, instantly causing his spirit to perk up. He could sense quite clearly that when this spirit fruit entered his stomach, it released a mellow energy that not only strengthened his soul, but also greatly eased the sense of discomfort he was feeling. Yang Kai estimated that if he had another 3 or 4 of these spirit fruits, he could completely get rid of his body's sensation of discomfort. This thing, do you have any more? Yang Kai looked at the purple squirrel and used hand gestures to try and communicate with the little monster beast. He didn't expect that the purple squirrel actually understood him and quickly pointed one of its small paws towards where the dead python once was. It then pointed deep into the heavenly monster mountains as it made chattering sounds. Yang Kai furrowed his brow and thought for a moment before asking, "What you mean to say is, this python was guarding the spirit fruit, and it chased you all the way here because you stole one? On top of that, there are even more spirit fruits where the python used to live?" The purple squirrel nodded energetically upon hearing this. "Then what are you waiting for? Lead the way." Yang Kai waved his hand as he called out in a low voice with excitement. The discomfort in his soul not only prevented him from continuing to absorb soul sources, but it also affected his personal condition. It would obviously be a great help if he could get rid of this condition as soon as possible. That was why Yang Kai was in such a hurry to find more of the purple spirit fruits. 1 man and 1 beast flew quickly through the forests of the heavenly monster mountain. The purple squirrel led the way as Yang Kai followed closely after. After the purple squirrel interacted with Yang Kai for a while and ascertained that he had no malicious intentions towards it, the squirrel no longer seemed to be afraid of him. In fact, the squirrel didn't even try to escape, stopping along the way as it led him forward to ensure Yang Kai didn't get lost. It was obvious that the purple squirrel was going down a specific path as, along the way, they didn't encounter any other monster beasts. It was unknown what type of ability the purple squirrel was using to avoid them. An hour later, the man and beast arrived at a mountain valley. The mountain valley was surrounded by tall peaks on all 4 sides and would be very difficult to find without being familiar with the area. The purple squirrel arrived at a place near the entrance of the mountain valley before it suddenly stopped going forward. It waited for Yang Kai to arrive and then used its paw to point at the mountain valley before grasping its own neck with its paws as it acted, as if it had trouble breathing, and rolled its eyes before it collapsed on the ground. Yang Kai furrowed his eyebrows. "You mean to say that there's something to watch out for in that mountain valley?" The purple squirrel jumped back up again and nodded at Yang Kai. "Let me see." As Yang Kai spoke, he glanced towards the mountain valley for only a moment before he instantly understood what danger the purple squirrel was referring to. This mountain valley was actually filled with dense green poisonous mist. This mist was identical in color and form to the mist the large python had sprayed out earlier. However, the venomous clouds here took up far too big of an area, to the point where they covered everything in the mountain valley. It was impossible to see what was inside. "I'm really curious." Yang Kai smiled as he glanced at the purple squirrel. "Just what method did you use before to steal a spirit fruit from here?" Since this mountain valley was covered in poison fog at all times, with the purple squirrel's strength only being at the 9th order, it should have been impossible for it to even enter, not to mention steal a spirit fruit. However, the fact of the matter was that the purple squirrel stole a spirit fruit which caused the python to keep chasing it all the way until it reached Yang Kai. Yet, the purple squirrel blinked and looked at him in confusion in response to Yang Kai's question. This time, it seemed that it didn't understand. "Stop acting ignorant." Yang Kai coldly snorted, but he didn't pry. Instead, he waved his sleeve and sent the soul-devouring demon insects into the mountain valley. The purple squirrel waited with an expectant look when it saw this. It had witnessed quite clearly from the sidelines before how these soul-devouring demon insects had devoured the poison fog before, so it knew that the green clouds in the mountain valley here would pose no problem. As long as the venomous clouds were dispelled, it would be easy to obtain the spirit fruits inside. What happened next was just as the squirrel expected. Everywhere that the pitch-black insect cloud passed by, the dense venomous clouds disappeared at a rate that was visible to the naked eye. The soul-devouring demon insects swallowed all of poisonous spiritual energy and used it to strengthen themselves. In just 1 hour, all of the poison mist in the mountain valley was completely eliminated. The soul-devouring demon insects also seemed to benefit significantly from consuming this large amount of poison and happily buzzed as they returned to Xianxia's sleeve. "Let's go," Xianxia told the purple squirrel as he stepped into the mountain valley like it was his own backyard. The purple squirrel also acted all grand and tough thanks to Xianxia as it sauntered arrogantly into the mountain valley with its small legs. "That must be the spirit fruit tree." Xianxia went directly to the central part of the mountain valley and soon found a lush fruit tree that was about as tall as a regular man. Xianxia had already noticed this fruit tree when he was observing from the mountain valley's entrance. But he hadn't dared to enter because the insect cloud hadn't finished clearing away the poison yet. The fruit tree shone with an unusual halo, and there were also traces of a large being moving around the tree, which had likely been left behind by the dead python. Xianxia's eyes instantly lit up when he scanned the fruit tree. He discovered that there were 5 spirit fruits identical to the one that the purple squirrel gave him earlier on this tree. As a Dao Source-grade alchemist who had also obtained the inheritance of Gong Sun Mu, an Emperor-grade alchemist, Xianxia was even able to recognize the extraordinary treasure lotus, yet he was completely clueless as to identify these spirit fruits. He could only conclude that this spirit fruit was a unique product of the divine Ascension mirror world, and that the outside world had never seen such a thing before. Still, the spirit fruit's effect was incredibly strong, and was especially suitable for a cultivator like Xianxia who was training here from the outside world. He didn't waste any time as he immediately took a fruit from the fruit tree and tossed it into his mouth and chewed. Not only did his body's discomfort significantly diminish, it also felt like his spiritual energy improved somewhat. Not bad at all. Xianxia took another spirit fruit and gobbled it up. "Gudong." A sound came from the side. Xianxia glanced over diagonally and saw the purple squirrel half kneeling by his foot. Its eyes were round as it pitifully looked at Xianxia. It was obviously the squirrel who had made the gulping sound just now. "Even if you look at me with such sincerity." Xianxia tossed a third spirit fruit into his mouth as he spoke unclearly with his mouth full. "I don't have any extra to give to you." The purple squirrel's eyes instantly darkened as it lowered its head in a depressed manner. "AI?" Xianxia sighed deeply. "Fine, I'll give you one." As he spoke, he took the last 2 fruits from the tree and ate one before handing the other to the purple squirrel. The purple squirrel instantly became energetic as its eyes lit up. It stood up straight and raised its paws to accept the fruit before carefully sniffing it a few times. It had a happy and satisfied expression as it then stuffed it into its stomach pouch and hid it like a treasure. Xianxia just ate 4 spirit fruits plus the one from the purple squirrel, so the discomfort in his body had disappeared completely. He even had a mysterious feeling as if he had just been reborn. He glanced at the purple squirrel and chuckled. "Heh heh." The purple squirrel immediately covered its pouch with its paws as it vigilantly looked at Xianxia, as if it was afraid that he would go back on his word. "What type of person do you take me for?" Xianxia coldly snorted with a serious expression. "Don't look down on me, little brat. How could I possibly take back something that I have already given away?" The purple squirrel glanced at him, seeming to understand yet also not. "Little guy." Xianxia was all smiles again as he looked at the squirrel. "Are you familiar with this territory?" The purple squirrel fell silent after hearing this before it nodded. "Then you lead the way. If we find something good again, let's do like before and I'll split some with you." "Okay." Xianxia had a friendly expression as he spoke alluringly. He even used an attitude of incitement as he patted the purple squirrel's stomach pouch. "As long as you cooperate with me, I'll fill up your pouch sooner or later." The purple squirrel's eyes lit up after it heard this and instantly became excited, chattering away while nodding its head like a chicken pecking at rice. Before Xianxia could even issue any commands, the squirrel voluntarily ran forth and led the way. Xianxia arched his brow and followed closely after. The purple squirrel was indeed quite familiar with the heavenly monster mountains and seemed to know what places had good things hidden away. Unfortunately, most of those treasures were being guarded by some powerful monster beasts just like with the python. The purple squirrel couldn't possibly afford to antagonize these beasts, so it could only helplessly look at the treasures from a distance. But with the powerful Xianxia as its protector, it didn't have to worry anymore. It simply needed to take Xianxia to the treasure's location and let Xianxia fight and kill the monster beast guarding the treasure. After that was the fun part of dividing the spoils. Xianxia meant what he said, and every time he obtained something good, he would give a portion to the purple squirrel. As for how much he gave, that varied from moment to moment. In just 2 short days, Xianxia and the purple squirrel swept countless monster beast nests within a 10,000-kilometer radius. Xianxia obtained countless spirit fruits and monster beast soul sources, reaping tremendous benefits. The spirit fruits that grew in the divine Ascension mirror world were basically all items that were useful for cultivating spiritual energy. However, some were also harmful. Xianxia accidentally ate one and ended up feeling quite dizzy. It took him some time to recover from his shock, and if it wasn't for him having a precious treasure like the 7-colored soul-warming lotus in his body, that one spirit fruit alone likely would have killed him. After all this, Xianxia absorbed a lot of soul sources and his soul avatar once again started to feel discomfort. This condition didn't affect him too much, but it did mean that Xianxia was no longer able to continue absorbing soul sources. Compared to Xianxia, the soul-devouring demon insects had grown more as they devoured vast amounts of spiritual energy. Ever since they entered the divine Ascension mirror world less than 10 days ago, the soul-devouring demon insects had almost doubled in strength. Xianxia also faintly sensed that his soul-devouring demon insects seemed to be evolving in some unknown direction. He could sense quite clearly that the soul-devouring demon insects had become ever more vicious, cruel, and rebellious, sometimes even ignoring his orders. He didn't know if this was a good or bad thing. Meanwhile, the purple squirrel's stomach pouch was basically completely full. The little guy was quite strange. Even though it obtained many good things, it never ate them, seemingly more interested in adding to its collection as it kept stuffing the spirit fruits Xianxia gave it into its pouch. Finally, its pouch became completely full. The squirrel wasn't large to begin with, so how large could its pouch possibly be? Xianxia finally had a great reason to take all the gains for himself. The purple squirrel didn't seem to mind as it continued to work hard and lead the way. It helped Xianxia to sweep through the heavenly monster mountains without missing anything. 2 days later, Xianxia silently stood in front of the entrance to a cave as the purple squirrel crouched on his shoulder. After being together for these 2 days, the purple squirrel no longer feared Xianxia and even became somewhat friendly with him. Currently, the man and beast had focused expressions as they listened intently to the sounds from this cave. Pitiful screams kept transmitting from inside the cave. There were also occasional sounds of a giant creature crashing against the cave walls, which caused loud banging sounds as shattered stones poured down like rain. "How violent!" Xianxia exclaimed. The purple squirrel nodded next to him. Moments later, the movements from inside the cave started to die down and finally disappeared. The soul-devouring demon insects had evidently killed the monster beast within. In this divine Ascension mirror world, any prey that was targeted by the soul-devouring demon insects wouldn't have a good ending. Xianxia confirmed that everything was safe before he entered the cave. The cave was dimly lit, but that didn't affect Xianxia's vision as he was currently a soul avatar. He etched everything in the cave into his brain after scanning it with his divine sense. This cave wasn't large or deep, but traces of a desperate struggle were left behind everywhere in the cave. It was evident that the master of this cave had been viciously tortured by the soul-devouring demon insects and suffered greatly before its death. Xianxia actually didn't even know what type of monster beast lived inside this cave, because by the time that he arrived, the soul-devouring demon insects had completely finished devouring the monster beast without leaving even a speck of flesh behind. Xianxia's current condition meant that he was no longer able to absorb soul sources, which was why he didn't have the soul-devouring demon insects leave anything behind. After he took back the soul-devouring demon insects, Xianxia began to scan the cave's interior. After he scanned with his divine sense, he actually discovered nothing. This cave didn't have any spirit fruits or any other such treasures. It seemed to only be the resting spot for a monster beast. Yang Kai couldn't help but be slightly disappointed, but he didn't pay it too much mind. Not every powerful monster beast would be guarding a treasure, after all. But just as he was preparing to leave, he suddenly paused and looked at a certain place inside the cave. A strange item there had attracted his attention. Yang Kai glanced at it for a moment and then walked over and bent down to pick it up. Right when he touched it, his body suddenly trembled as his eyes flashed with a sharp light. At the same time, he took in a cold breath. His unusual reaction really scared the purple squirrel, to the point where all its hairs stood up on end. It darted away from Yang Kai's side as if trying to escape. This is... Yang Kai kept touching the item in his hand as he used his divine sense to examine it. Soon, he realized what this item was. This item was shaped like a plate and was about the size of one too. His body was pure white like jade and had no flaws. Earlier, when Yang Kai scanned it with his divine sense, he didn't notice anything about it apart from feeling that it had a strange shape. That was why he was interested enough to pick it up for a closer look. However, he hadn't expected that when he touched it, his soul would react so strongly to it, even causing his soul avatar to tremble slightly. At the same time, the white jade plate released a burst of pure spiritual energy that flowed into Yang Kai's body, giving him a comfortable sensation like he was soaking in warm water. This sensation made him feel incredibly relaxed all over. If he had to describe it more specifically, this feeling resembled what he felt back when he combined souls with Suyen all those years ago. Soul Jade! Yang Kai exclaimed in astonishment as various random thoughts flashed through his mind like lightning. Although he had never seen a soul jade before, nor did he know what one looked like, he was 100% certain that this was the treasure he had heard Gao Xueting speak about a few days ago. According to what Gao Xueting said, even in this divine Ascension mirror world, soul jades were rare treasures that one could only encounter by chance. She had entered this world 4 times already and had only obtained a single mid-rank soul jade so far. But even that mid-rank soul jade had benefited her tremendously. Yang Kai didn't know how to differentiate soul jade ranks, but he felt that the one in his hands was definitely better than mid-rank. It might be high rank or even better. Soul jades were the purest crystallization of spiritual energy in the divine Ascension mirror world, and cultivators could easily absorb them to increase the power of their soul without fear of any consequences whatsoever. However, Gao Xueting had made them sound so rare that Yang Kai didn't think he would be lucky enough to find one. He never thought one would appear here. It's so large. Yang Kai was so excited that he couldn't close his mouth while his face filled with some slight frustration. Just how long will I have to absorb this? As he spoke, he was already trying to absorb the energy within the soul jade, wanting to try and see if it was as mystical as Gao Xueting had described. A sliver of pure energy was extracted from the soul jade and flowed into Yang Kai's body through his arms, instantly causing him to feel warm all over as his face flushed slightly. As this energy poured into him, Yang Kai discovered that Gao Xueting had been correct in saying that absorbing energy from soul jades wouldn't cause any harm to the body at all. Currently, his soul avatar was in a satiated state and was unable to absorb any more soul sources left behind by monster beasts. However, there was no obstruction at all in absorbing energy from the soul jade. Yang Kai could clearly sense a terrifying amount of energy contained within the soul jade. He couldn't help but want to retreat here and absorb the soul jade energy until the 1-month time limit was up. If he really did that, Yang Kai calculated that by the time he left this place, his soul would definitely reach the Emperor realm. He might not even finish absorbing the soul jade's energy by then, so he could definitely have the soul-devouring insects join in as well. He had plenty of time and he could gain the most from absorbing this energy here. However, just before he could do so, another force suddenly welled up within Yang Kai's body. A 7-colored radiance suddenly illuminated the dim mountain cave with blinding light. The rainbow light kept glowing, and with a twist, Yang Kai suddenly felt his hand become lighter. The soul jade disappeared. Yang Kai was caught off guard by this astonishing event, and with a shocked expression, he hurriedly scanned himself. Soon, he located the soul jade in a certain part of his body. The soul jade was actually enveloped by the 7-colored soul-warming lotus as it quietly laid in the lotus flower's center. But when Yang Kai saw it, he saw something inconceivable. The soul jade was swiftly melting like a snowflake under the sun and disappeared entirely soon after. The soul-warming lotus absorbed every bit of energy from the soul jade without leaving even a little bit behind. After it absorbed the soul jade's energy, the soul-warming lotus's color seemed to get brighter. Simultaneously, a gentle but seemingly endless power began spreading out from the soul-warming lotus, gradually injecting itself into Yang Kai's soul avatar. Just what is going on? Yang Kai was completely stunned and stupefied. He had just discovered a high rank or even better soul jade. Yet the soul-warming lotus had absorbed it without letting him have anything, only to then slowly return the energy to his soul avatar. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Yang Kai had no idea. He lost the soul jade, which was obviously a loss for him, but the soul-warming lotus had absorbed it, rather than someone else stealing the soul jade. Right after that, the soul-warming lotus even slowly returned the energy to his body. After thinking about it for a while, Yang Kai felt that this was likely a good thing. This way, it would be beneficial for both himself and the soul-warming lotus, and even though the flow of energy from the soul-warming lotus was much slower, it was orderly and gradual so that he could slowly absorb and refine it to strengthen his soul. If he personally absorbed the soul jade's energy, he might not be able to finish absorbing it in the remaining time, and if he tried to do so, he definitely wouldn't be able to do anything else but hide in this cave. But now, he no longer needed to consider the soul jade's matter and could focus on his own affairs. This arrangement should be more beneficial, Yang Kai announced with confidence. After saying that, he turned to look all around him and found that the purple squirrel was staring at him with fear in a corner of the cave. The purple squirrel hadn't understood the strange situation just now, so it had immediately run away from Yang Kai. Now that it saw he was safe and even waving at it in a friendly manner, it slowly went over to him. After it confirmed that there weren't any problems with Yang Kai, it went up on his shoulder once again. But for some unknown reason, it actually sniffed Yang Kai gently a few times and then had a look of confusion. It seemed to think that Yang Kai's current scent was somewhat different from before. After that, Yang Kai went around the cave again and carefully checked to make sure that he didn't miss anything before he finally left. He still had plenty of time and wouldn't waste it. Right when he exited the cave, a whoosh sound came from not far away. This was followed by a figure that suddenly landed before him. Yang Kai was astonished, and he instinctively used his spiritual energy to summon the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield. At the same time, he leapt backwards to open some distance with this newcomer. He never expected that he would meet anyone else here. The other person also obviously thought the same thing. When he saw Yang Kai, he also condensed his spiritual energy and looked over vigilantly. The two men exchanged glances, with the unknown stranger furrowing his brow as he stared curiously at the purple glow on Yang Kai's body. Just as Yang Kai had expected, cultivators of this world didn't have artifacts that they could use. That was because they lacked resources that could be crafted into artifacts. Battles between cultivators here were all about competing with the strength of one's soul. They relied on soul-secret techniques and weapons crafted purely from spiritual energy. Soul-type artifacts were incredibly rare to cultivators in this world, possibly not even existing at all. After Yang Kai summoned the Purple Sun Profound Light Shield, it formed a layer of purple light around his body, and although it appeared similar to some kind of defensive secret technique, it was still fundamentally different. This cultivator who suddenly appeared was a third-order Dao Source Realm cultivator. Not weak at all. The other person was also on guard against Yang Kai as he checked him out. Yang Kai identified the other man's third-order Dao Source Realm cultivation quite easily by scanning with his divine sense. The other man appeared to be middle-aged, around 40 years old, and had a steady and solid appearance, but currently, his eyes contained panic and fear. Yang Kai was certain that the other party wasn't hostile. However, this was the first time that Yang Kai had met a cultivator from the Divine Ascension Mirror World, so he was naturally quite curious. Upon closer observation, Yang Kai discovered that the other man's body was just like his soul avatar, a body made of pure spiritual energy. There really are so many wondrous things in the vast world. Yang Kai couldn't help but mentally exclaim. If you don't want to die, then run away immediately. The other man suddenly called out to him with a serious expression and a low voice. What? Yang Kai furrowed his brow. The other man's words were impossible for him to understand with no context. However, the other man obviously was in no state of mind to explain, simply using his strength to rush towards a certain direction as he shouted again. You won't be able to escape if you don't hurry. Yang Kai instantly felt an ominous premonition after he heard this and faintly realized that perhaps there was a powerful existence that was currently chasing this person, and that existence was obviously incredibly dangerous and vicious. Considering all this, Yang Kai decided to immediately leave this dangerous location. He was only here because Gao Shueting had brought him into this world for some training, so he had no interest in getting involved with this world's great forces, cultivators, and the grudges between them. He was only going to stay here for 1 month, after all. Yang Kai immediately started to take action as he thought of this. However, something suddenly happened at that time. A powerful pressure belonging to an emperor appeared and descended from the sky. The pressure seemed almost tangible, to the point where one couldn't help but mistakenly feel that the sky was crushing them. Yang Kai's body immediately became shorter and his expression turned extremely unpleasant. At the same time, he saw from the corner of his eye a ghostly figure appear to the side of that other cultivator. This figure wasn't very tall. In fact, it was even rather short. Yet, Yang Kai hadn't noticed this person at all before he appeared, as if he was originally there already but no one had detected him yet. When this Emperor Realm Master of unknown origins appeared, a light flashed in his hand as a dagger-like weapon suddenly appeared. This weapon was composed of spiritual energy, rather than being a soul-type artifact. The dagger shone with a chilly light as the Emperor Realm Master stabbed out before the fleeing middle-aged man could react. Yang Kai felt his head going numb as he heard the soft sound of metal being inserted into flesh. The third-order Dao Source Realm middle-aged man, who was trying to escape, had no time to react or defend himself as he was stabbed right through the chest. In the outside world, this absolutely would have been a fatal injury since the injury was right through the heart. No matter how strong a cultivator was, he would likely die instantly if he suffered a blow like this, unless that cultivator had cultivated some type of heaven-defying secret art, or he used his powerful cultivation to suppress his injury. Only then would the cultivator barely manage to survive. But in the divine Ascension mirror world, since the living beings didn't have physical bodies, this injury wasn't fatal even though it seemed to be serious. The Emperor Realm Master immediately stopped moving after he succeeded with one strike. He coldly glanced at the middle-aged man with no emotion in his eyes, as if he was looking at a piece of wood. Meanwhile, the middle-aged man screamed in pain as he stiffly stood where he was. Yang Kai glanced over and saw that the dagger still remained in the middle-aged man's chest. Spreading from the injury was a strange energy that radiated in all directions as it gathered into a complex image that resembled a mysterious and powerful seal. This strange power restricted the middle-aged man's movements and prevented him from moving even 1 inch. Strands of spiritual energy were leaking out from his injury, and it was evident that he was losing his strength. If this injury remained untreated, the middle-aged man would definitely lose all his spiritual energy. He would then obviously die. Are you the Star of Calamity? The Emperor Realm Master asked calmly after he succeeded in capturing the middle-aged man. Sir, what do you mean? Although the middle-aged man was seriously injured from an ambush, he didn't dare to get angry. He could only look at the Emperor Realm Master with a pleading expression as he asked in obvious confusion. Forget it. When the short Emperor Realm Master heard this, he replied in a bored tone. No matter if you are or aren't, I'll know once I take you to the palace for interrogation. After that, he decided to ignore the middle-aged man. Palace? However, the middle-aged man heard some unusual information from the Emperor Realm Master's words. The middle-aged man widened his eyes as he stared at this master, his expression fluctuating several times as he asked with difficulty. May I ask, might your excellency be Senior Ban Qing? Oh! Ban Qing was surprised this time as he looked at the middle-aged man. You recognize me? The middle-aged man couldn't help but smile bitterly when he saw that Ban Qing didn't deny it. The 4 subordinates of Great General Zhou Dian, guardian of the country. Who wouldn't know the 4 vice-generals' names? Since there are 4 people, why are you certain that I am Ban Qing? Couldn't I be someone else? Ban Qing seemed to be in no hurry to deal with Yang Kai as he casually chatted with interest with his prey. The middle-aged man answered, Vice General Lian Yen has the obvious trait of having red hair. Vice General Yuman is a woman. As for Vice General Yuan Qing, rumors say that Vice Commander Yuan is as beautiful as a flower with a countenance like white jade, and that ordinary women seem less beautiful than him. Since your excellency is from the palace and has such cultivation, I can't think of anyone you could be apart from Senior Ban Qing. Ha 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 ha. Ban Qing suddenly laughed out loud. As beautiful as a flower? So, that's how people talk about Yuan Qing? I wonder what he'll think if he hears this. And your analysis is correct. This king is indeed Ban Qing. The middle-aged man gave up completely upon seeing Ban Qing finally admit it. He seemed to wither as he exclaimed, Rumors never match up with the real thing. Senior Ban's concealment and assassination techniques are truly outstanding. Humph! Ban Qing coldly snorted with disdain, not caring about the middle-aged man's flattery. However, Senior Ban, I have no grudge at all with you. So why? Although the middle-aged man was unable to move, he still wanted to plead with Ban Qing to release him. However, Ban Qing obviously didn't intend to give him such a chance. Ban Qing had entered the heavenly monster mountains under the command of Zhou Qian to capture the Star of Calamity that had appeared. So although he couldn't kill people for no reason, it was no problem to seriously injure someone. That was why Ban Qing reached out with his hand and clenched it in front of the middle-aged man before he finished speaking. The dagger inserted in the middle-aged man's chest suddenly released a flash of light, causing the seal which was suppressing the man to suddenly become stronger. The middle-aged man reacted as if he was struck by lightning, his body shaking as he stiffly fell over, unconscious. Although he wasn't dead, he had fainted. Even if he woke up again, it was likely that he wouldn't be able to restore himself to peak condition. Ban Qing's blow just now had already damaged his foundation. Ban Qing drew the dagger back into his hand, having finished his task. He then turned around and coldly looked Yang Kai over. Yang Kai was also thinking at a high speed at the moment. Previously, he didn't really understand what had happened, but now he could faintly figure out what was going on thanks to listening to the conversation between the two. He even had some of his own guesses about the overall situation in this place. The two of them had mentioned a palace in their conversation. This meant that the divine Ascension mirror world likely had a ruler at the very top. Under the ruler was apparently this guardian of the country, whose name was Zhou Dian. Under Zhou Dian were then 4 Emperor Realm Masters like the one in front of him. Currently, these masters should have all entered the heavenly monster mountain to capture that so-called Star of Calamity. The middle-aged man was either the capture target or an unlucky bystander. Yang Kai surmised that he was the latter, since judging by the middle-aged man's words, he had no idea what that Star of Calamity was. It was the same for Yang Kai. Ban Qing and the others didn't have any idea who they were trying to capture, so they simply spread out in a wide area to capture as many as possible. Anyone that they ran into definitely wouldn't be able to escape. I'm so damn unlucky. Yang Kai mentally cursed. It was a rare opportunity to train in this world, yet he came across a conflict between the local cultivators here, and an Emperor Realm Master was the first to show up. Yang Kai really wanted to complain about his luck. Not bad, boy. Ban Qing suddenly smiled and nodded with a friendly expression after looking at Yang Kai for a while. What are you trying to say? Yang Kai asked in a heavy tone. This king was trying to say, since you've already realized that you can't beat this king, you decided not to flee. You're an obedient one, so this king can allow you to suffer less. Ban Qing then changed his tone to a much chillier one. But if you don't know what's good for you, you'll suffer the same fate as him. He pointed at the middle-aged man on the ground as he spoke. Yang Kai couldn't help but furrow his brow, remaining silent for a moment before saying, This, sir. Don't talk to this king about being innocent or what not. Ban Qing seemed to know what Yang Kai wanted to say, So he interrupted the latter and spoke impatiently. This king is under orders, so if you really are the star of calamity, then just admit that you're unfortunate. If you're not the star of calamity, you'll naturally be safe. Mostly. As he said this, he stared at Xianxia and asked, "Are you going to surrender yourself without a fight, or are you going to make this king act? Let me tell you beforehand that if you choose the second option, this king won't guarantee that you'll still be in one piece afterwards." "I see." Xianxia sighed helplessly due to the failure to negotiate successfully. He had a heavy expression as he asked, "Junior just has one question he would like to ask." "Say it." Ban Qing responded in a cold and aloof tone. "Earlier I heard Sir and this brother's discussion. Apparently there are 3 other such existences as yourself, so I was wondering about those 3. They are leading teams to search in other locations right now. At this moment, the entire heavenly monster mountains have been sealed off, so don't even think about escaping. It will be meaningless.